good to go.
We'll wait for Michelle to give us a nice sign.
Oh, is everybody?
Shall we go? Diane, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And I think we want to start with the roll call.
Chris Capessis,
Here.
Peter Dwyer,
Here.
John Miller,
Here.
Kristen Finn,
Here.
Ivan Heredia,
Here.
John Brewer absent, Jim Chard.
Here. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes.
Okay.
I'd like to move approval as written.
Second.
Chris Capessis,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
John Miller,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia,
Yes.
John Brewer is absent, Jim Chard.
Yes. So I don't think we have any minutes to approve. Am I correct on that? Okay. So I think we're up to that point of comments from the public that are not on any of the items on the agenda. I think swearing in comes on. Okay. Okay, so we want to swear in anybody who wants to speak tonight?
Please raise your right hand by the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Okay. Now the comments from the public. Any comments that are not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, and having sworn in the public and comments, do we have any presentations this evening, Michelle?
We do not.
It's going quickly tonight. Okay, so we move on to the quasi-judicial hearing items, of which we have 4 this evening. So I want to read this introduction here. This hearing shall be conducted in accordance with the City of Delray Beach quasi-judicial rules. The applicant and the city shall be permitted to present their case. The public shall be allowed to speak for 3 minutes each, or a maximum of 6 minutes if the person represents an organization or a group of people who are present but agree not to speak. The City Commission Board, members, staff, and the applicant may be allowed to cross-examine a witness. The city or the applicant will be allowed to offer a rebuttal to the testimony. The decision to approve or deny an application or appeal may not legally be made upon personal views as to whether a project is a good project or not, nor may a decision be based on the numbers of citizens who support or oppose a particular project. The law requires that all decisions must be made on the basis of whether the project meets the requirements of the law, the comprehensive plan, and the land development regulations. All right. Do we want to proceed to the first item on the agenda of COA 2023276?
For the record, my name is Michelle Hewitt, planner, and I'd like to read Addenda Item 8A for 108 Northwest 4th Avenue, COA 2023-276, into the record.
As the applicant is coming up, do you want to check to see if there are ex parte communications?
I do.
That would be great. Thank you.
Are there any ex parte communications?
No.
No.
None.
Nope.
None.
No.
This button? Yeah. So she's gonna. Okay. Am I talking or not talking? Oh.
My name is Sandra Amani. Thank you for seeing us today. This is a rendering of the east side of
If you could just state your name and address, sorry, your address for the
sure.
record.
108 Northwest 4th Avenue.
Thank you.
Do you want me to describe what I'm doing here?
Yeah, go ahead now. I'm
Fantastic.
sorry.
So this is the original facade, just enhanced. We have the original sidewalk, we have the porch, everything is remaining the same. New roof, new windows per your historic direction, and we are adding shutters and the railing, as well as fencing around the property. This is what the project looks like right now. There are no windows, there's very little plumbing, there isn't a bathroom, there isn't a kitchen, very few walls inside. It's pretty much gutted, and you can see through to the earth below. This would be the north side of the property. You can see that we will have a 4.5-foot fence, or 4 foot, whatever is required by the pool. And then the extension that is not visible to the street. This is the current view of the north side of the property without the extension. Here on the south side, you can see the parking to the right. So we will do straight back parking, the fence, and a door into the house. And then the extension on the left. It's the current view. We have a pool permit that just came out. It has been approved. It is set back far enough. Our extension, by the way, is 55 feet off of 4th Avenue, so it will not be visible. And in the back, it extends back. This is the current view of the back of the house. And our goal is to maintain the look and feel of this project. I mean, we love the area. I think that the house, can be spectacular. It's dilapidated right now, and we would like to bring it up to code. Here you can see that to our north is a vacant lot, and to our south is a beautiful house. We have several vacant lots on the property, on the block. Maybe you can describe this better. This is the site plan, and in the gray is the area of the extension. The current house roof line is over 13 feet, and the extension will be almost a foot lower. You can see that you would be able to demo the extension, and you would still maintain the structure of the original house. Not sure really what to say about this, but in detail, I'll just flip through. Please stop me if you have questions. The architect is here and he can answer them. And I included the interior just so you could see the layout. I think that the extension adds tremendous functionality to this beautiful cottage, and it will help it, for the modern family to live there. But inside, we plan to duplicate the interior, some of the traditional. We're keeping the fireplace, we're keeping the floors. I think it's going to really maintain the historic look. And that's it. I'm going to sit down.
Once again, this is Agenda Item 8A for 108 Northwest 4th Avenue. So here we have an aerial with the subject property outlined in red. Northwest 4th Avenue is to the east, with Northwest 1st Street to the south. I'm going to read some brief history on the property. So the subject property consists of Lot 15, Block 27, Town of Delray. The property is located within the locally designated West Settlers Historic District and contains a contributing one-story masonry vernacular structure constructed in 1949. The structure's architectural features include a stucco exterior, chimney with flat cap, a covered front porch on the east facade, porthole gable vents on the on the east and north facades, and flat stucco windowsills. So here we have the existing survey with the existing structure outlined or highlighted in blue. The structure currently is primarily situated on the northeast corner of the lot with an existing nonconformity for their north side setback. Here we have the proposed site plan, again with the existing structure highlighted in blue, the proposed addition highlighted in red. There are some ground level improvements also proposed, including a driveway that's an extension of existing concrete apron, some pavers around the pool, patio decking, and some stone pavers. There's also a dedication in the rear as well, which all of the pools and the addition comply with. So here we have the existing front or east elevation. This is along Northwest 4th Avenue. Here is the side corner south elevation. Here we have the side corner north elevation. And this is the rear or west elevation. This side is where the addition is proposed to be located, as well as the pool and a good majority of the ground level improvements. Here we have elevations. On the top is the existing or front east elevation. Again, this is facing Northwest 4th Avenue. And at the bottom is the proposed front or east elevation. New elements are highlighted in red. This includes new shutters, railings, beveling of the columns, and a portion of the addition visible from the front facade. Here we have the existing on the top, again highlighted in blue, and at the bottom this is the rear where the addition is primarily located, visible, highlighted in red. This is the existing side or north elevation on the top. At the bottom again is the proposed, with the highlighted in red being the proposed elements. Again, on the side, on the left, you can see the new railings and beveled columns, some new or replacement of trim for the windows, and then the addition on the right there. Here we have, again, on the top, the existing, and at the bottom is proposed in red, the addition on the left, and then a removal of a window for a door on the existing structure. And here are proposed renderings. On the top is the front or east rendering. The colors proposed and materials are either compatible or considered appropriate for this architectural style or the existing structure. At the bottom is the proposed side or south rendering. Here we have the other side at the top, and then at the bottom is the rear with the pool and the addition. This is the proposed color materials form. You can see the colors are neutral, muted, and are considered appropriate for this structure and modification. And we have the Secretary of the Interior standards with the items used primarily for this proposal highlighted in yellow. Same thing here with the visual compatibility standards. We have a staff report excerpt that discusses the portion of the addition that is visible from the public right-of-way. While it is visible, it is set back significantly and compatible with the existing structure and helps with differentiating it from the existing structure. And then we have this other excerpt here, which talks about the material of the railings, proposed to be aluminum. While wood is most appropriate, there's no concern with the use of aluminum, as it is also considered an authentic material. And here we have the site plan technical items for the proposal and our findings that we used and for the board to use when analyzing this project. And that concludes my presentation.
Any rebuttal by the applicant?
Mr. Chair, if you just address public comment first, and then go to rebuttal and cross-exam.
She catches me every time. Any public comment? I see some neighbors back there. please come up.
If you'd like to make a comment, if you just come up to the podium, introduce yourself and your address, and let us know if you are sworn in.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm George Williams, along with my wife. Oh, Lottie. And you want to introduce yourself?
I'm John Morgenstern. I'm George Williams, is the president of the West Settlers Neighborhood Association. I'm a block captain for it.
Yeah, we also live in that same block.
Okay. If you guys want to just give yours separately, though, you'll each have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you so
I live
much.
at 131 Northwest 4th Avenue. Our home is a 1940 home. I really admire that the outcome of this particular project. I mean, it looked really nice, and it only brings the neighborhood up, to be honest with you. I think it's gorgeous, and I just wanted to kind of commend the new owners. I mean, that's fascinating, and of course, you know, I certainly support that, to be honest with you.
I'm John Morgenstern. I live at 126 Northwest 4th Avenue, right
And-
across the street from Mr.
Sorry, Mr. Morgenstern, were you sworn in? Just want to get you sworn in. if you
I
haven't
live at
been.
126 Northwest 4th Avenue, approximately 3 doors down from this particular property.
Did you get sworn in?
No.
Okay. I just thought I saw you come in a little bit later, so you wouldn't mind if Diane could swear you in? No, it's okay.
Yeah, no?
You're welcome to speak. You just have to be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. By the authority vested in me, the notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go
All
ahead.
right. I'm John Morgenstern, 126 Northwest 4th Avenue. I've had experience with the Historic Preservation Board as recently as September of last year, and I'm very pleased to see that this is a development in the neighborhood. The building has been boarded up for many years. Homeless people sleep on the front porch often. There's been a number of police incidents at the front, and I believe that this is going to help restore the neighborhood to its best possible situation. And it is the one property on the block that is not occupied and is a hazard. From what I understand, being a member of CERT, we are, as a fire department, will not even go into this building because it's boarded up, even if there's people inside of it, and there are on occasion. So I commend you for expediting whatever you can do to get this building up to speed. Thank you.
I want to thank all three of you for taking the time to help us make a decision here. So now, cross-examination. From the applicant, any cross-examination of the city's presentation or rebuttal?
We're thrilled.
Yeah, okay. From staff?
None from staff.
All right, I think we take it to the board. Ivan, would you like to lead off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. So, a couple of points that come to mind. In particular, the window detail, the sill, and then the top detail. Is that something that was part of the original plans, or something that was brought up as part of the architectural design? And yeah, there we go.
I can go to the existing. So you want to know if, like, what they're doing now is like kind of like repair, or?
Yeah, the way the elevation reads, obviously there's no detail above the window and below the window.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so how did that element come about? And I mean, just historically.
It was added for design. There's the existing. There's currently also a small kind of purple trim. So that was, it wasn't there, but it was added a part of this proposal for.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you want to ask the applicant? Or?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. I'll just step here so you can hear me because I'm quiet. I believe 90% sure that if you look on Google Maps at the original house, that it shows when it used to be a different color from many, many years ago before it was boarded. The last owners removed all the windows, and I think that they removed trim at that time.
Okay, thank you. Sure.
I think what was removed was a storm panel track that was at the top of the window, not an actual architectural integrated feature like what you're asking about. So that, I believe from our research, that's new to this structure. That's a new feature.
So the question is that in keeping with the neighborhood design, or any further thought that needs to be given to that?
I think it's up to the board. It's under your purview if you're concerned with it. This neighborhood is historically Black community, settled by African Americans in the late 1800s. So the architectural style that we've seen on these buildings spans from grandeur at the Mount Olive Church to simplistic and some of our other structures. Masonry vernacular would be the style for this building. So that type of feature could be seen on a building like this. Would it affect its historic integrity? I don't know that it's that intense of a change that would have a negative effect on its integrity.
Okay, yeah, I'm not opposed to it. It's just I was wondering if there's some historical value to it.
Yeah.
And then the fence color, I noticed that that's the only thing that's a different color. Obviously, the windows and the trim are white, the fence is black. Any reason for that? And the railings seem to be white too, so I was just wondering, is it so it kind of is mass, it goes away, or it doesn't read as much?
So I think the applicants can choose whichever color they want. So we don't push them in one direction or another. However, we have learned that when utilizing vertical rail fence like this or black chain link, black vertical rail aluminum, that tends to disappear in the landscape, which allows for septet principles to be identified, which could be helpful in this instance. So I know that the railings on the house are white, which would be appropriate for the house, and the vertical pickets are black. So that's typically something we see, and when we see black, we know that it's going to look nice with the landscaping.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. That's all I have.
Okay. Kristen?
Yeah, I had a question about the fence, but now that that's answered, I think it's a great rehabilitation, and appreciate the community coming to support it. That helps us to know what's going on in this neighborhood. So yes, I'm in favor. I think it's a great job.
Yeah, I concur. I think West Settlers has lost so many of its historic stock that it's great that somebody's going to renovate this instead of demoing and starting all over. And a lot of those houses were modest on pretty good sized lots. So this is a great use. I'm all in favor.
All right. Chris?
I think it's a beautiful design. It's modest but significant. It's important for the street for this house to get improved, so I love that. I actually think the fence being a different color shows that it was added later, right? So the white was original, but the fence is something new, so I think that contrast is nice to see. I'm in full support of this project. I think it looks great.
I think there's a trend here.
Yeah. Since I get to go last, thank you for bringing this to us. It's a beautiful project, and I like the scale, the way the addition was done. It's really well balanced, and it'll be an asset to the neighborhood. So I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Okay. I'm definitely going to vote for this. I think it's a terrific architectural design and restoration. I did have a couple of questions. The questions about the colors have already been answered. Given the fact that it was abandoned for some time, as part of the planning Have you exposed the walls and the roof beams and understand the integrity of those? We seem to always run into these situations that when we approve the plan and then they remove the walls, they find out that there's no footings or that the ties to the beams are not compatible with what we expect to under our current requirements. So has any of that work been done? Please come up if you would.
All right, I'm back. Actually, part of the roof is, you can see straight up into the attic in part of the house. So we did climb up there, and I've had the roof inspected. Although we are replacing it, all of the joists are fine. We will probably tie them down when we place the roof, right? So I'm sure that's part of it. And then part of the floor joists are exposed. So you can walk on the floor in the living room, but then it is missing in parts of the bedrooms and definitely between the kitchen, and it's already gone in the bathroom. So I think the previous owners had gutted the house with the intent of remodeling it, ran into something with, ran out of money, ran into something, and then stopped. And so that's why it's in the condition that it's in. So yes, to answer your question, we hope that we don't have to replace any of the floor joists. I've treated it for termites already. And we only found evidence of termites in the window framing, so where the windows would sit. We didn't find any in the attic, we didn't find any in the floor joists. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So there's no slab. This is just
It's just overly
CBS walls or concrete block.
concrete block walls
Okay, and a crawl space.
and a crawl space.
Okay, all right, makes it easier.
And I had one more question. I was a little unclear as to what was wood and what was aluminum in terms of the fencing.
Oh, okay, great. So the front is aluminum, and then on the south side of the property, there's an existing chain link that is the neighbor's, but it runs right on the outside of my property line and comes about 3/4 of the way down, maybe a little less. So we were planning to leave that because we have to, but plant in front of it so that it disappears.
Okay.
And then the rest of the house will be a 6-foot privacy fence with gates. Wood, yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I think we're ready to vote.
I'll be happy to make a motion. I'd like to approve the certificate of appropriateness 2023-276 for the property located at 108 Northwest 4th Avenue, West Settlers Historic District, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Is there a second?
I second.
Diane, call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
John Miller,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia.
Yes.
John Brewer is absent, Jim Chard.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is item 8B, which is for 1019 Nassau Street. COA 2023-267 is entered into the record. This is a certificate of appropriateness and a vertical relocation request for this property. Mr. Roy Simon is here and will make a presentation.
Do we want to do ex parte first?
That would be great. Thank you.
None.
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 I did speak with Roy Simon about this months ago, just not in any specifics, just comments. And it won't affect my vote one way or the other.
All right.
Good evening. I'm Roy Simon, architect at my office at 766 Southeast 5th Avenue, Delray. With me is the owner of the house, Mr. Ron Dankler. and she's gonna do the push button. You approved the building on the left in April. And what we proposed to do, since, well, that was in April, and then we followed with talking about the king tide, the hurricanes, so they became nervous. They were gonna make this addition and improvements. Maybe we ought to get it above the, at least meet the flood zone. So we proposed to raise it to 7 feet. Currently, the finished floor is at 4.73 feet above sea level. So this will add about 2 feet, 4 and some odd inches. What this does to the project is it's the same house. The ground's going to stay where it is. We're going to raise the house, and that would require the steps up to the front deck. So we enlarged the front deck. The garage door was a question. We had already, you had approved the widening of it. So with the additional height, it now becomes closer to what the original proportions were of the garage door. The other little change we made on the west side of the building, let's move on. Well, that's what it'll look like when it's done. I'm kind of going ahead of the slides, but this is our request to raise it. You'll notice this is the flood zone, and we're right in the middle of it pretty much. An interesting thing is that outline of the blue, which is the flood zone, is the 1947 hurricane when we experienced the flooding from Venetian to East 7th Avenue. And that was, we had that water flooding for about a month, I think, back then. This is 74, and then we're going into the 47. You got 47 next? No, this is just normal. No, that's the 47.
Yeah, this is just normal.
This is normal. So anyway, the idea is to get it up off the ground. So we didn't think about raising the land because it would affect every neighbor. And retaining, well, some people think we were planning to raise the land, but all we're trying to do is raise the building. I don't know. The only other change we made to the building besides that front deck was on the west side. There used to be access from the garage to the living quarters, but since we're going to leave the garage floor at grade level, current level, there's no way to get up there. So we're going out the same back door from the garage up and through the bedroom. And what we did then was to replace the window with the door and relocate the window. That's about it. Everything else remains the same as you approved April 19th. I don't know, is there anything else we need to say?
I mean, this just talks about the options for elevating per the interior standards for rehabilitation, and there's really not even options except for to elevate the structure. And this just tells examples from the Secretary of Interior on before and after on what is recommended. So this is just taken straight off of their site. So we feel that we've done the very best we could to accommodate that.
I mean, the only choices we had were to either elevate the building or do a lot of stuff, but the only thing that seemed to be make any sense was to raise the building. So that's what it looks like now, and this will show it what we propose. There's a site plan where the properties adjacent are about the same level, so we're not changing that. That's the house. And those, the only additions where the star is, really, that front deck. That's the plan that you approved.
Actually, that's the existing right now. That's the existing.
That's
floor
existing
plan
now?
today, yeah.
Okay, you can see the sidewalk out there. That's the proposed.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know
Thank
if
you.
you want to go through the whole scene or not, but basically, it's a simple thing. You've already,
Yeah.
that's what the house will look like when it's raised as compared to what it is now.
Just
We tried to keep within the visual compatibility and streetscapes, everything it required, so I think we have presented what is necessary.
Great. Let's see what staff has to say. Thank you both.
Okay, for the record, I'm Katharina Palavoda, Historic Preservation Planner. This is agenda item 8B. It's for 1019 Nassau Street, COA 2023-267. It's a certificate of appropriateness and relocation request. Okay, so this is actually, okay, let me do a quick history. So this is located with in the Nassau Park Historic District. The site contains a 1939 minimal traditional style contributing residence. And then according to the building permit, our yellow cards, there was a rear addition that was later added in 1947. So here you can see the location. It is north of Nassau Street in the center of the street between Venetian Drive and Gleason. So as Mr. Simon did mention, in April 19th of this year, they did come before the board and they did request a certificate of appropriateness and a waiver to request the construction of a second-story addition, the enlargement of their existing one-car garage, modifications to existing windows and gable vents on the one-story single-family residence. The waiver that was approved was for the second-story addition in relation to the secondary and subordinate visual compatibility standard. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through some of these images. So these are all existing. Okay, so that's front elevation. This is southwest, southeast, the side west, and then the rear. Okay, and then so here we can see what was originally approved. This is a rendering on the left-hand side. And so the proposal for tonight is for the vertical relocation of the existing structure. And then see on the second wall, I guess on both of them, you can see the approved second story. Okay, this is the existing survey. And then we have the site plan as it is today. This is the approved site plan where you can see the second story addition that's in red, and then the other red part to the right was they did a widening of the driveway. Okay, and then this is the proposed site plan. So including the approval from April, we can see the stairs to the west that were added, as well as the enlarging of the existing front porch, adjacent to raising the structure. Okay, so this is the requested demolition plan. In addition to the raising of the structure, the request also included the existing first floor where the second story is to be placed. I believe that they're requesting demolition for the exterior walls. This is was not part of the original approval, so they're bringing this forward today. It's less than 25%, so according to our regulations for historic, for demolition, if it's under 25%, they're not required to do a full demolition request. So, but they are coming before you this is included in the request today. We did ask, and this is a site plan technical item that we have, is we do see the request here, but we're just asking for the demolition plan just to be a little bit more clear, just for records, but also when it goes to permit, we want to make sure whatever's being requested is no more than the 25% that they're asking for. Okay, so on the left side, this is the existing front elevation, and then here you can see the proposal. So Mr. Simon did mention that they originally came before to request the widening of the garage. So with this additional proposal, they're also changing the height. So I believe it was originally, the height was 7, and I think they're enlarging it by 2 more feet. So it's 9 foot total for the height. As well as you can see as well as the raising of the structure, they're also widening this front porch here. Okay, so we've also included the approved elevation, so you can see changes that were previously approved. We see the 2nd story, as well as the changes to the driveway, which also included the widening of the garage. And then we have the proposed next to it, so you can see the differences. Okay, so this is the east elevation we see on the existing. We see this window here that was removed. The proposed, you can see the porch here as well as the vertical elevation. The approved elevation for the east, we see the 2nd story. There's some additional changes to the windows, and then we can see the vertical elevation. Okay, this is the existing north elevation on the left-hand side. We can see there's changes to the window pattern on this side. I can go to the other one, but and then the proposal, we can see the elevation. So this was what was approved. So we see changes to the windows. They've included the 2 windows as well as the 2nd story. Okay, this is the existing on the top, the existing west side elevation. And then we see the proposal. So as Mr. Simon did mention, they are including a new set of stairs here. And then we can see some changes to doors and 1 window on the side. There were previous modifications to the windows and doors that were approved with the last request. And then so we can see 2 more changes here in addition to the vertical elevation and the construction of the new stairs. These are the building materials. These are the same that were approved, so there are no changes to with regard to any materials. So there are no concerns regarding materials or colors. They're all for what were previously approved. Okay, so these are excerpts from our staff report. When we talk about the Secretary of the Interior standards, we did have some concerns with the modifications to the windows and doors that were being requested, mostly just because in the last request there were already modifications, and because this is a contributing structure, including the front elevation, the more changes that there are, the more we're kind of getting away from the historic integrity of the structure. So we did have concerns regarding that. Here's an example of the west side. We can see that there were changes made here to the windows and doors on this elevation, and then we can see some more changes, as well as what was the front elevation with the doors and windows that were happening there, as well as the garage door that was being widened. We also had some concerns with the stairs on the west side. Let me see. Okay, so we do have a minimum 3 foot height limit when it comes to structures that are encroaching within the setback, and we do see here it was fine because they did meet the minimum 3 foot, so there were no concerns here. But we had some discrepancies on this side because the finished floor elevation says 4. So we did have a site plan technical item that just wants to make sure the site plan or the elevations are kind of cleaned up just to be consistent, to make sure that this does meet the 3 foot requirements. Okay, and then regarding visual compatibility, there, as I previously mentioned, we had concerns regarding changes to the openings. There was already an approval to change the width. This request is changing the height too. So this is just more alterations from the existing front facade. Okay, so here was the approval. Oh, this was the existing elevation. So we can see there were changes regarding to the windows and the change of the style of the door on the existing structures, as well as the garage. And then the proposal along with the front porch being enlarged. We do also have the height of the garage being modified as well. Okay, so here we can see the approved. So these are the changes that were approved in the last request, and then here we see the additional modifications. So just according to our standards, visual compatibility and Secretary of the Interior, it's the board. The board needs to decide whether or not they feel that these changes are appropriate, just based on the cumulative changes that are happening on the structure. Okay. Regarding relocation, we do not have any concerns. This isn't a flood zone, so vertical elevation of the structure does over time will protect the structure from any flood or any issues regarding like the FEMA requirements. So we don't have any concerns regarding the vertical elevation request. Okay, so highlighted are the standards that apply to this request. And then we have the visual compatibility standards that also apply that are highlighted. These are your findings. And then these are the waiver findings, which I think we need to remove those. Those were from the last request. But regarding the waiver, it was for secondary and subordinate. So the modifications that are happening to with this request do not affect the changes that were approved with that waiver. Okay, and these are a list of the site plan technical items. Okay, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, any public comments?
Yes. Hi. George Law, 46 North Swinton. I can't imagine you turning down a request to raise a house in a flood zone, but I'd like to read you something just for a second to look at the broader perspective. And always keep this in mind when somebody asks to raise a house. It says here, one of the most celebrated modern houses ever built in Miami-Dade County, famed architect Archer Brown and Parker's waterfront sea area home in Coral Gables appears to be headed for eradication by a Texas construction mogul who paid $36 million for the masterpiece in August to tear it down. And then it says, it seems if it falls, as seems probable, the house would be a victim of one of several developer-friendly pre-exemption laws passed by the Florida legislature to restrict local officials' once routine zoning powers. This just brought that to mind. There are people who actually will come and tear down a house like that if they could, and just say, well, it's in a flood zone, I can do it. State statutes cover me. Anyway, please approve this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long.
Good evening, I'm Kara Edwards, and my husband and I live at 1030 Ocean Terrace, directly behind the home in question. Our concern lies in the area of the home, which is 5.5 feet, which lie in the setback. The entire back of the property is only 4.5 feet from our property, and the setback is supposed to be 10 feet. I don't know if you're moving that to the, are you moving it down? Thank you. So our concern is that we've lived in the home for 16 years, and we've struggled to try to camouflage the home from ours, and we are right underneath power lines. Power lines separate our properties, and obviously the proximity is very close. In fact, the air conditioning, as you can see, is literally on the fence of our property. So if we're raising this 2.5 feet, I understand the concerns of the FEMA concerns, but it's going to be an even greater struggle for us to try to deal with that. Our entire back of our home and our living area is right there. All we look at is this home. So we just became aware of this when we received this letter. We were unaware of the April proceedings or any modifications that were going to be done to the home. But in any case, it's just going to be a greater hardship, especially because also the air conditioning will be raised as well. And literally, we sit 5 feet from the air conditioning, so that will be our evening sitting next. We'll be right at head level. So it will be a struggle for us. We just want to voice our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have the rebuttal, so I guess you would be up next, Rhonda.
Thank you for raising those concerns. I'll get up here. I do have some photographs that I'd like to show. And I don't know if we can pass these around or whatever. This is the property that's 1030 Ocean Terrace. So you can see where there's a chain link fence that borders our abutting properties. By the way, it's nice to meet you. I've never met you before. So they have a raised pool area and deck. So the only part of that property, to my knowledge that I can see from all the vegetation, is approximately 1.5 feet around the perimeter. The rest of that property is raised considerably. And just to address the air conditioner unit, I don't think that's going to be raised. I think that because there's just too much concrete to do that, so that will stay at the bottom level. So anyway, there, and I also have another photograph of our property from Nassau Street, and you can see the height of the building of the condominium complex behind. So that building existing is taller than what our property will be when it's finished. So while I can completely appreciate your concerns, we don't want to encroach on anybody's visual or anything. There's considerable amount of foliage between the two properties. And we have the benefit of the shade of all of their foliage that goes over the fence. So that's kind of nice for us since we have so little space there. But so basically, if anybody would like to look at these photographs.
If you just pass them to the clerk right there, she'll pass them around.
So these are a little bit weird, but those are the tops.
Can she keep those for the record,
Sure.
or we just need to make
that's
copies
fine.
of it?
So the setback itself doesn't change.
The setback doesn't change, the ground level doesn't change. You know, so the FEMA requirement, the reason for this is that in order to get, to meet the FEMA requirement in this particular flood zone, is the finished floor elevation has to be 7 feet. So we could have filled in dirt in our entire property and, had retaining walls and, French drains around everything, but I think that would be more problematic for the neighbors than just vertically elevating with a higher stem wall and a taller foundation and masking it with all the vegetation and the plants and everything else. So of course we need to add some steps to get up in there, but there's no difference in the elevation of the actual property, and there's no difference we're not going to cut down their vegetation or anything that's separating the properties at the moment.
Okay, I think we're good. Any rebuttal by staff?
Sure. So this is a resiliency project. FEMA standards are 6 feet. Building code is 1 feet. In effect, that's a 7-foot finished floor elevation minimum, which these owners are proposing to raise the entire structure so that the interior slab is at 7 feet. Things that become affected and what we've experienced with other properties isn't the first we've experienced, is the AC will have to be elevated to that minimum finished floor elevation on the exterior. So perhaps that's something.
Could you expand on that just a little bit?
The building code does require, and the FEMA requirements do require, that the outdoor AC mechanical equipment be set at the same finished floor elevation as the home. We'll go into a lot more detail on that with our next item after the next with the marina, because that's a similar project. So that may be something that the owners want to, explore, the location of that outdoor AC condenser. The other thing that will happen is they will have to, and I note it's not on the plans, it's fairly minor. Actually, it is on this plan. You can see right here faintly this little square or rectangle right there. They have flood vents underneath. They're venting for the underneath portion of the house, but what I think was missing is on the garage here. In this area, there are going to need to be flood vents installed. So they're going to look like the other vents. That's a FEMA requirement as well, because the garage will be remaining at the existing finished floor elevation. Those were the rebuttal items that I had. So thanks.
Thank you. I think we're ready to discuss at the board level. Anybody want to go first? No? We can vote for Chris to go first.
No, I'll go first. I can see how we arrived here. I mean, it's a beautiful home, it's a beautiful street and neighborhood, and it would be a shame to lose this house. So there aren't many alternatives. I think this is probably the best alternative. It does affect neighbors, and that's unfortunate. But to preserve the house, it's going to have to come up. I mean, we see what happens when it rains here, and it's real. So I have to support it. I think it's going to be a beautiful project and an asset for the neighborhood.
Chris?
I agree. I think raising the house is the practical approach and the right thing to do for the long-term health of the structure. Yeah, it's unfortunate that the neighbors might have to see a little bit more. There was one image that showed the neighbors' houses, and it looked like with the raising, it's still at the same height as the neighbors' elevations. Is that accurate? It was showing the streetscape with all the neighbors' houses, and it looked like the roof line was going to be at the same height as the other neighbors' houses.
Oh, you want to go to that? Katharina's going to go to that. She believes it's in Roy's drawing, so we'll bring that up for you. Yeah, Mr. Simon, if you want to come to the podium, if the board has a question, please come to the podium.
And if that's accurate, then it shows that even with raising the house, it's still at the same level as the direct neighboring houses to the left and the right. And
So it will be higher.
It will be higher?
It will
Okay.
be higher.
So I
These
wonder what that
houses
was
all
showing.
sit, when they were originally built, they were built about 18 inches above Crown of Road. And Nassau Street comes down on a hill from A1A. So it's lower at the west end of Nassau Street as you get closer to Venetian. There is flooding that's occurring in this area. But these houses are all at that 18 inches above Crown of Road. So they're about 4.5-ish feet. All of them are.
There it is. This is what I was looking at.
So what you're seeing here is that the house is still touching the ground where the other houses are.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
That's what I'm going to do, yeah. But what the difference is in this here is you can see that their porch, that's what all of this is. So it's really the front door is kind of the test that you look at. Look at how much higher
So the
or
roof
lower.
line will be higher then?
The roof line is going to be slightly
the whole house should
higher.
be lifted up from the neighbors.
So you can see in these houses where their front doors are here, this front door is up in the air. Now with the Secretary of the Interior flood adaptation guidelines that we've utilized in conversation with all of our owners that are facing these challenges, there are a number of different approaches. Most of those approaches are going to work better for historic properties not almost at sea level, right? So outside of this area, because you really can't abandon the lowest floor, which a lot of buildings do. They abandon the lowest floor, make that some sort of storage or parking or whatever, and then utilize upper floors. There's not a lot of room around the perimeter of this property for them to dig trenching. And there's a whole, method of how do you do resiliency with that approach. Most of the approaches that are going to work for our area are vertical relocation, vertical elevation, raising the building in place. The option, I think Mr. Dwyer noted there aren't a lot of alternatives. The alternative is they could leave the house at its current finished floor elevation, but they would have to seek a variance from this board in order to allow the structure to remain. And this board's approved those types of variances in the past. It's just what the board decides with the owners. Some owners want to leave it and some want to increase it. So what we're looking at is that the overall historic structure still retains that original detailing, the size of the windows. And I think Mr. Simon has done a good job of that front facade here. You know, with the previous approval, the board allowed the garage to widen and the front windows to get smaller. So they're still coming forward with that type of approach. It's still the two windows on either side of the door with a single garage. So they're not changing the patterns, and the whole house is raising. Some of our projects we've seen have an interior slab poured, and then they add height to the top of the walls and then slide the windows up on the building. So that's another approach. That's not what they're doing here.
Could you go back to that streetscape for a second? Because Chris raised, I believe, the question of the roof lines being lined up. And it looks to me that
Is it the other way?
in the after image, even though the floor is higher, the roof lines.
This way. Am I going the wrong way? Catherine is telling me I'm going the wrong way. Okay. Sorry. This one here, it's hiding at the bottom. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Chard, please go on.
If you could zoom in again. The new second story obviously is higher, but that is secondary to the design. But the main roof line looks like it's, once the floor is raised, is still in line with the neighbors. And one neighbor to the right, or two neighbors to the right, is substantially higher yet.
And,
So that,
and remember, these are schematic drawings, so the
Yeah.
architects aren't able to fully determine the exact roof heights of the structures in the surrounding area. So this is schematic. It may be slightly higher and may be slightly lower once it's built. To field verify every single structure for a streetscape is not realistic.
okay. Yeah, it just seems to me that it would not be disturbing the rhythm that we like to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kristen? I did not.
I had
mean,
one other thing I
okay.
was going to ask.
Go ahead.
I wanted to ask staff if they had any issue with the 9-foot height of the garage, because it does feel like an out of scale to the rest of the house.
So, according to the Secretary of the Interior Standards and Visual Compatibility, we just, it is the front elevation of a historic structure, so it's up to the board to decide whether that's appropriate. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a concern that I have, is that if you put a person, to scale, a 6-foot person to a 9-foot garage, it's a very large garage. And so you can sort of tell with the two elevations that I'm looking at on my screen that's going to be a very drastic change to the front facade. And I do appreciate the client not, or the owner not raising the property height. I think that's going to keep a consistency along the streetscape. And if you did do that, you'd have to retain your stormwater, and you can't do that. So I think raising it is the only approach.
Okay.
I wonder if raising the driveway alone solves the answer. Probably not. But that's the one concern that I have, is that change.
With the garage door.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I went through this in my mind and realized why Roy came up with this. It really has to do with the rhythm of that front elevation. He had to maintain that when he raised the house. A 9-foot door on a house like this is very unusual in height, but it makes sense for this elevation. If you see the relationship with the windows, the before and the after, the relationship is maintained. And Roy, you can speak on that if you like, but that's what I see.
Would you like to comment?
Well, I guess we studied that. We felt that if we raised the garage floor, we'd almost have to raise the grade, and that would be a no-no. So we were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I could try elevating, getting to the garage and raising the floor and getting some kind of a, if we were okay with the city, but then the city engineer gets involved. And I don't know if we can solve all of those people at the same time. We've been working on this thing since April. Actually, we started in 2021. So we just, whatever you'd like to do. I mean, we tried to do our best to solve the problem without bothering the neighbors. And sure, we can try it, but I don't think we'd gain more than about 3 or 4 inches.
While Roy is here, may I ask a question? Yeah?
Go ahead.
So Roy, when you're vertically elevating this whole structure, how are you increasing the height of the garage walls? Are you adding space at the bottom?
The wood frame will rise.
And then you're going to add more down below?
The stem wall will come on up.
Yeah.
The same stem wall that's being built for the rest of the house.
So you could bring the top of the garage door opening, frame it down a little bit so that there was
But
more of
the
that header.
We could reduce the head, yes.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of keep it close to where the head of the windows are.
I think it's a thoughtful comment by the board.
I think I can make an adjustment on that, maybe add a 4-inch slab to raise the floor a little and get a little apron on that.
I'm thinking maybe instead of doing any kind of floor changes or ground level driveway changes, the change that the board may appease the board is that you frame the top of the garage header down a little bit so that there's more space at the top, but the garage door is still an 8-foot door.
That was really my intent, to try to get it more in that proportion.
Yeah.
Apparently we screwed up.
I mean, that might seem like it would address the concerns of Mr. Cabezas and Mr. Dwyer.
I think so. I think the proportion there would work better in my mind.
Okay.
Are you okay with that, Roy?
I was
Roy,
not.
will you stay there? Well, because I wanted to ask you a quick question. I saw in the relocation plan where you got 2 proposals for the raising of it. Have you decided on which company you're going to go with?
Well, they're leaning toward Brownie right now.
Okay.
They haven't made that decision yet.
Okay.
I mean, you haven't made your decision yet either, so.
You're right. I was just
There's no point in contract.
Yeah.
We do have a deposit with one of them, yes, ma'am.
Okay. I would like to address this. I think it might be a little bit out of rhythm, in my opinion. I don't know if this is what you're thinking. If there's too much of a header, you know, it depends on where the windows.
Oh, you're saying if we bring it down?
Yeah, it might, you know, my thought process is he's trying to keep, well, this picture doesn't really show what I'm, yeah.
But it's clear what you're saying.
Yeah. I think having like a header or whatever, it may draw your eye. I think the whole point is not to draw your eye to the garage door. You know,
Right.
I think the LDRs are to keep the consistency with the front facade and not to have one thing stick out to be like, that's a 9-foot garage
Yeah, that's a
door.
very tall door. I'm
Yeah.
building a big house now and with 3 garages, and it's a massive house, so the doors are 9 feet tall. But that's in keeping with the scale of that house.
Right.
Most normal houses I build, the doors are maybe 8 feet tall.
It would allow extra space for the address or the lighting. I know you're in board discussion.
Yep. Thank you.
So you're saying you think the way it is, you're better with this than adding a header and reducing the size of the garage door.
Yes, I think at the finished product, if you have too big of a gap above the garage door, I think you're gonna your eye, it's like design, like you want your eye to not focus in on what's weird.
I
What's
think
out of
different.
scale.
I think,
Well, that's why we were having the discussion.
yeah, so for me, it's if you put a person next to it, 9-foot doors is very tall. So if you were to bring the scale of that door down, that space between the overhang of the ceiling and the garage, I don't feel you'll really notice maybe a foot more of that space, which you could put, I guess, the numbers of the house, or you could, I'm not sure what you could do there, but I tend to think a very large garage door would be more noticeable than just where it lines up with the window of the house.
Yeah. It is gonna be raised though, like you gotta visualize, like my house is raised, and so it's gonna be raised. Like the house is gonna be raised, I feel like the garage door needs to be raised. Sort of like you're gonna stretch this, but you're gonna keep this.
I think he's talking about splitting the difference possibly. So if you're at 7 foot now, you're going up to 9 and a couple inches.
Because you're not stretching anything else. You're raising.
Put a foot header in there.
You're
so
actually
you end up with
stretching the garage door, though.
Yeah, you end up with an 8 foot, which is tall for a garage door.
I mean, I'm a realtor, I'm not an architect, so I'm not trying to design from the dais here. I'm just saying.
My thoughts are, well, I'd support it one way or the other. Whoever makes the motion is going to have the pleasure of wording it how they want to do it. But obviously the owner here sees the writing on the wall. To me, this signals intention to stay in this house for a while. If not, just let it ride and eventually it'll flood. This won't be the last one we're going to see here on this street or in this whole area. Sea level's gone up 8-9 inches in the last 50, 60 years. It keeps going up another inch every 3 or 4 years. You can debate on the cause, but you can't debate on the facts. So those are the facts, and Delray has an issue, especially in this area. One of the historic photos up there showed a garage with flooding, a guy up to his knees. That house is on Federal Highway. So that house flooded in the 1947 hurricane. Imagine if that happened today and everything up to Federal Highway was flooded. So I don't see it here, but it's on one of these old pictures. There it is. So that was my great uncle, by the way. But so I'm okay with a lot of the little tweaks that have been made to the windows and the doors. We got to take the big picture here. The house is being saved. The basic structure, form, size, footprint of the house is staying the same. There's going to have to be some accommodations made to make that happen, and I'm okay with it. So, I understand, Chris, your concerns, and I agree. A 9-foot high garage door is high. It does sit a little bit more prominently forward of the house than the front door, which is, again, one thing we don't like to see in a historic district, but that's the way this thing was created, and I'm not going to second guess Sam Ogren, I believe, who designed this. So, if somebody wants to craft a motion to lower the header a little bit, I'm fine with that, but overall I'm in supportive of the project.
Kristen, did you have any other comments?
No.
Okay. Ivan?
So I do have a few comments. The material of the steps going up, does that match the driveway? Yeah, so all that'll be cohesive.
It's all to be paver brick.
Okay, good.
Do we want to have Roy come up to the microphone?
Sure, we can, but I can answer the question.
Okay.
It's paver brick.
And the height, it's obviously we're approving a higher building, so that's within code, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I didn't see it in the plans I've been looking, the setback, the front setback to the first step. Is that encroaching in the setback requirement?
They are slightly encroaching, which is permitted, as long as the porch and steps don't exceed 3 feet in height.
Okay.
These are tiny, like a quarter of a postage stamp. They're very small lots.
Right. No, I get it. And the big picture is, you're right. We got to look forward 50 years, and the rising sea levels is a reality, and we're going to be dealing with this. And your comment is well taken. You're absolutely right, and I agree with that. That's all I have.
I just have a couple of quick questions. The flood vents that staff recommended, is that okay with the applicant?
What I might suggest is,
If you could just wait till you get to the microphone before you start speaking, just so you can get on video. I appreciate it. Thank
I'm going to
you.
give you my name again or not?
No, it's okay.
Has it changed?
I would like to suggest perhaps I work with raising the floor maybe 4 to 6 inches to get an apron. It can work. And drop the head a little bit, get it to a little better proportion. That's doable. And it would probably be helpful to get it. Because right now it's only a few inches above grade and water will get in there.
Yeah. Okay.
So it'd be better if I can get it up and get a
I
little
think
apron.
the sense of the board
If you'll
is
allow a
they-
little
yeah.
apron, and we don't run into some more questions on that.
I was asking about the flood vents, the recommendation on the flood vents from staff.
I'm sorry?
The recommendation of the flood vents.
In the garage, do
in-
you need flood vents in the garage?
About the garage door? Yeah.
It's about once you do the addition, because the garage will remain below the required finished floor elevation, you have to put in flood vents in the garage wall. That's a building and FEMA code requirement. It's not negotiable.
It'll be concrete. What's the concrete wall then?
You'll have to cut into the concrete wall to provide vents there. So that's what I was bringing up, and Mr. Chard is making sure that you understand what we're talking about. So much like you have these other vents in the back for the crawl space, they'll look like that.
Well, it'd be the same wall, yes, ma'am.
In the garage.
In the garage, yes, ma'am. From that purple line up is the existing wall. Okay?
Yeah, right down here. Which I don't know who changed this to magnify.
Well, that's finished,
Don't love
existing
that.
finished floor, yeah.
But yeah, you'll have to have flood vents there.
Okay.
I wanted, while you were both here, this air conditioning unit raising or not raising question, it just seems like both parties would like to have the air conditioning unit basically where it is. But you're saying that's a non-negotiable FEMA?
So they can ask you for a variance to keep the AC unit at existing finished floor elevations. They have not asked for a variance for anything because they're asking for a relocation to go up vertically. If they ask for a variance, they have to process back through this board to get that approved. We don't have administrative authority over that.
And we can't do it tonight, is what you're saying?
It would have to be notified. There's a $1,500 application fee. $1,500 application fee to ask for a variance.
But if the unit is raised somehow, they don't need to.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
What about just relocating the unit?
They can move it, but it
side?
still has to be at that
Right.
7 foot.
But if it were in a side yard, it might be less objectionable.
It could. Something for them to look at.
That's not part of our concerns tonight.
Yeah, that's true. I just wanted to ask about the railings on the new steps. I couldn't tell from this exactly what that design is or what.
We're working on adjusting that, I think, to get it working.
Okay.
So
All right.
Mr. Simon is noting that he's working on adjusting the design of the railings for the stairs. It would be our guidance to him to ensure that it was integrated into the design of that architecture, probably some type of vertical spindle.
Okay. Thank you both for clarifying that. Are we ready to vote? Can somebody make a motion, particularly with regard to the header and the apron? Ivan?
I think that's Chris's. I need to get it up here.
Okay.
So
we're in agreement with that, with the recommendation that.
We'll find out when we vote, but that's what I heard.
Yeah,
I see.
Roy was suggesting that they raise the floor elevation of the garage maybe 4 to 6 inches, so that raise the header
And
lowers
then-
another foot. And
So raise the garage elevation and increase the header size.
I'd say, I mean,
Can we have Michelle maybe help
Yeah.
with the wording?
I think you're on the right track. I think design the garage door to be an 8-foot opening would probably be the simplest way to say.
and let them figure
Let
out
them
if that's
figure it
the
out.
header or the floor or both.
Yeah, I guarantee once they move through permit, they're going to find out how expensive a 9-foot garage door is, and they're going to be coming back to ask for an 8-foot garage door. So that's my prediction.
Okay, so I move to approve the Certificate of Appropriateness and Relocation 2023-267 for the property located at 1019 Nassau Street, Nassau Park Historic District, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations, subject to the following conditions: that the garage door will be 8 foot in height. Yes, period. Okay.
Second.
Call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
John Miller,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia,
Yes.
John Brewer is absent, Jim Chard.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We go to item 8C.
Okay, I would like to enter COA 2023-181 into the record. This is for Sunday Village Block 61. It's a level 1 site plan and certificate of appropriateness. We do have the applicant, Mike Cavelli, here. Before we have the applicant presenting, we do have the Sunday Village time lapse from October. So we'll go ahead and play this, and then
It's
we'll get
lovely.
Mike ready.
I'm picturing Benny Hill in my head.
Who can hum something?
In January, bringing the collection of time lapses that we've received thus far for you all to see.
Wow. What a
But there you
change.
can see the underground parking garage is going in. That was October. They are making fast paces on this.
Or
Typically, they're about every 30 days we're getting them. We have
That's
a once a
impressive.
month construction meeting with their team. And Bob Morgan, who's the lead, provides us with these time lapse. So we're really proud that they've invested and taken the time to put cameras out on the site so we can see. And I do have to probably at some point tell Bob, you're going to probably have to move the camera because once the buildings get in, we won't see over them. So in January, we'll likely bring the collection of time lapses that we've had thus far, so you can see them all together. So Mike is going to present.
Hello,
Just
Mike
before
Cavelli.
you get started, Mr. Cavelli, could we just do ex parte communications?
I was going to say that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
None.
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 Okay, Mike Cavelli, Cavelli Design, 1209 South Swinton Avenue. Today we're going to talk about Block 61. As you saw, construction is going fast and feverishly. And in any project, when you have construction, you find things in the field that need to be adjusted. And that's pretty much what this is all about. We're going to talk about Block 61. There are 3 main areas that we're going to look at for some modifications. I'll walk you through these. The staff report was very good in detailing every one of those items. I'm not going to go through all the history. I'm sure staff will. The first item is building 2 and 3. This is a life safety issue that has come up. If you see the 2 yellow areas, the area on the left is the existing building and the area on the right is the proposed. There's a vestibule required because there's access to the terrace and to the stairway, which is a fire exit. And so it isolates that building area. And also down at the bottom, you'll see there's a little door added, and that's an extension of an exterior walkway that has a railing. So you really aren't concerned with the interior changes, but the railing is an elevation change, and we just want to get it on the record. It's very minimal. If you look at the rendering, this gives you the area where it is. Probably you won't even see it or really notice it, but we just wanted to get it of record so that change is part of an approval. The next area is along First Avenue on Building 9. This is mostly because of, as they've completed the parking garage and they start looking at existing grades versus the proposed grades that were in the plans, there were some grade issues, and this is primarily an ADA issue. So with the change in the grades, there were some things done. So if you see in the red circles in the top, there were doors on the sides. But if you look all the way at the top of that upper image, you'll also see some other doors at the very edge of the thing. So it's not like the doors are disappearing. These are just extra doors. Those doors are being changed to windows because of the way the grading has to be adjusted. And then you'll see the yellow sidewalks at the top are kind of broken up, and at the bottom they've been placed together so that you can get continuous ramping in that area. And then on the left you'll see the little sidewalk change where the sidewalk is following the site corner rather than going straight out. And on the right side you see the landscape area has been expanded, and where the door used to be, and that was so we could get proper grading and slope on that ramp in that area. This is both north and south side elevation changes. This is the north side. On the left you see a couple of arched doors. I'm not sure how we got arched doors in the beginning, but it doesn't match any of the architecture that's there. So since we had to make this change, we decided we're going to take the arched door out, and that would be the far left door. And then you see on the slide to the right the new door, which is a square door with an awning over the door for rain protection that is similar to the awnings and all of the other elements that are within the project. The door and window combination on the left it has to be removed, and so we're just adding two more of the windows that are consistent with the windows that were already approved. And then this is the south side. It's a similar situation, they're just flipped. And this probably gives you a little better, and I'm sorry that I did not zoom this in, but let me see if I can. Where's the magnifier on this? Is this it? It's not working. It's the top button, right? There we go. We're really talking about this area right here on the side where this sidewalk going up is being moved to the south, and you can't really see the door, but it's right about where that arrow is. And it's being changed to this, to where it's the triple windows, and you can see the walkway being moved away from the building and up farther. So that's essentially the elevation change on the building in terms of what changes on Building 9. Then there's a mechanical building that houses the generator, the dumpsters, the electrical rooms, the transformers. We put all of the transformers inside buildings so that they're not out on the street and you don't see them. What we decided was that we needed to enlarge the dumpster room so that we can put a very large compactor in there rather than use regular dumpsters. And so we moved the generator room from the yellow square where you see around to the other side of the elevator tower. And this gives you an idea what the change is. So we had to make the overhead door in the front larger to accommodate getting the compactor in and out, and then the door on the side shifted forward for access to that. Additionally, in the roof part of it, by moving the generator to the back, it allows us to close that roof in. And there is an office building to the south of this, which would be the right-hand side, where now they're looking at a clean roof and they're not looking down into the generator area. This is just another detail of the door modification on the front door. And this is the rendering of what you'll see from the streetscape, and you can see the office building that I was referring to that's looking down on that roof on the right there. On building 8, the modification of this were life safety issues that came up. If you look in the red circles, in the building on the left, you'll see there's like kind of a central core with a stairwell, and on the right, you'll see there's a stairwell with a central core reconfigured and another stairway. So that was a life safety issue that we had to add internally, and as a result of doing that, the building had to grow a little bit on the corners, about a foot, so that it would accommodate the circulation patterns with internally. Additionally, if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see the large yellow square on the left and the smaller square on the right. That area of access had to shift to the left so that we have proper elevation and sloping for ADA accessibility. So the elevation change that we had to do because of the way the stairway functions is essentially we took the windows on the left and right side of the center core away and put shutters up that are similar to the ones that are the far left and the far right. And then at the top there was a double door that was replaced with a single door, which I think has a little more continuity. But this is because there's a stairway behind it, and it makes the building function properly. This demonstrates where the walls got pushed out, and if you look, let me see if I can do this again. The distance between like the edge of the window and where the building is just gets a little bit wider, and that's about the only change to the facade of the building, but it was necessary to accommodate the interior circulation. And then this is the rendering that shows that area, and you can see where the walkway had to be removed and moved farther to the left. And then this wall gets extended, and then you see the triple awnings in the windows that were then changed to a single awning with the planter box closed in and additional landscaping placed in, and the cut is farther down for the ramping. And this is a side-by-side where you can see the difference in the upper door change and the difference in the awning change on this facade. And that's the landscaping that really doesn't change much other than that planter in the front, and this is indicative of the landscaping that will be installed. And on the Paseo side, which is the east side of it, it's the same changes to the facade in order to be consistent with the architecture of the building. And then here it is again in terms of on the Paseo side with that same 3 awning configuration. Here's with the 1 awning configuration, and then they're side by side, so you can get an idea of the change is very minimal. And there it is with the landscaping that doesn't really is affected because of this. So that's my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
This is, so the request is for Sunday Village. This is block 61. And so I'm not gonna go over the whole history. This is 4 pages, so I'm just going.
Please
I know
do
you
not.
guys. are very
I
well
think we've
aware
heard
of
it,
where this
yes.
property is and what it is. So I'm just going to give you just a brief overview of the request. We do currently have blocks. So this is block 61. That's the request for tonight. Block 69 and 70, as well as some other modifications to block 61 are currently in, and we're working with the applicant on an additional, it's a larger COA that you will see within the next few months. But as Mr. Cavelli did say, block 61, the buildings 9s and then all the building 8s, 3 building 8s are currently in for permit. And it was at the time of permit that there were some comments regarding fire, so they had to put additional stairwells in, and that kind of affected the elevation of the building. These are infill structures. These are not historic, they're new builds, so there's no, with regards to the request, there's no real concerns to changes, but because these are exterior modifications, they had to come before the board. And because of that, they're already in permit. We figured we pulled some of the requests out for the elevation so we can get them approved, so we can get their permit, so they can continue on with these structures. Okay, so this is block 61, the areas of the request. So here we have 9 north and 9 south. There was some landscaping and hardscaping modifications, as well as some slight elevation changes with the doors and the windows. And then these are building 8 north, 8 west, and then 8 south. I think I got that right. So those have elevation changes, Mr. Cavelli mentioned, as well as some slight hardscaping and landscape changes. Okay, so we did some images of what's existing on site. You guys did see the time lapse. So this is, the view when you're looking at it across Atlantic Avenue. Here's another one when you're at the intersection, getting ready to cross Swinton and Atlantic. This is on site, the east elevation, so we can see some of the historic structures here, and then we're looking west, so this is what we saw when the underground pieces were coming together. Some more images of the southeast elevation. Okay, southwest of the site, and you can see all the historic structures. So over here, this is the area where all the building 8s, and then to the north of that, the 2 building 9s are going to be constructed. Okay, looking towards the west, you can see another image, and this is the area for the subject request. Okay, so we're going to go through building 9 first. So these are the elevation changes. Mr. Cavelli did mention, I don't think I put 2 of the doors that he mentioned, but I'm glad he included those in the request for I think the north and the south sides that I did not get in our presentation. So these are the north and south elevations of building 9 south. So we can see how on the existing ones, we do have the arch doorways. There's only 2, as you can see, and then this is as existing. And I believe just the grill was removed from this one. It was for fire and like safety purposes, so that was removed. And then we see the change in the elevation here from the 2 arch doorways, and we have 4 windows total created, and then the door that also matches the other elevation. Okay, this is building 9 north. The exact same thing. The request was pretty consistent. Whatever was changed on one elevation, the rest were to match. Okay, and then this part of the request is for the 3 8 buildings. So we can see here, and I think it was just one structure that didn't have the shutters on the top. So we see them. It's consistent. So we see this side that had the shutters for the doors. This one didn't, so they're just adding shutters for them on all of them just for consistency purposes. Mr. Cavelli did mention that on the east and west elevations that the structure did enlarge an additional 2 feet. We do have a requirement for building widths. The max is 60. There's no concerns regarding the change of the width. I think the total was like 44 feet, so there was no concern with that. Okay, so these are the east elevations of Building 8 South and 8 North. So here we have the changes here. So we have double doors on the top with windows, and then Juliet balconies with awnings. And then they've been changed for the vents, and then there's where the double doors were changed, there's now a single door, and there was kind of like a reconfiguration of the doors and windows here. There we go. Okay, so this is the west elevations. This is 8 North and 8 South. Also, for life safety purposes, the stair orientations, they were reversed. There was a separation of separation of stairs requirement. So in order for them to meet that requirement, they reversed the stairs. And then the double doors that were originally existing are now single doors. Okay, so this is the south elevation of Building 8 West and 8 South. I noted the change for the width changes, but there's no exterior changes to this side of the structure. Okay, so the mechanical yard, this is the south elevation, the mechanical yard, and then Building 8 North. I didn't know any changes on this side for Building 8 North, but as Mr. Cavelli did mention, there were some changes to the mechanical yard. The trash compactor area was enlarged, and the generator was slightly shifted more north. So we see here we have the existing roof here. It's doesn't go all the way through because we have the trash compactor area, and then the generator was existing here, and then we see the door into the generator area. So when the generator was shifted, it's behind this section right here. The door was relocated here, and then we can see the roof covering to enclose the entire trash areas because it was enlarged. Oh, and then okay, we see. Let me see. Shutters, okay, and the shutters were also added for consistency purposes on the 3rd floor. Okay, same on the west elevation. We see the shift with the stairs. The overhead door on the mechanical yard was slightly enlarged. And then on Building 8 West, we also see the same similar changes. The double doors on the top was changed to a single door, and then the doors and windows were reconfigured, and then the Juliet balconies were removed, and the vents were in place. Okay, here's some aerial views of the mechanical yard. So originally here, this was just the trash compactor area. The open air generator was here, and then we have the door into the generator area. And then we see the trash compactor area was enlarged. The door was relocated here. And then this is where the open air generator is proposed now. Okay, here's another aerial view where you can see the change of the doors. Okay, so these are landscape and hardscape changes to the south side of Building 8 West and 8 South. So here we see this is the existing proposal. We did note that during our review there were the walkways didn't seem to go anywhere. It seemed like it was a little overly landscaped. And I think that was something that maybe we didn't catch in the previous review. But you can see here with the proposed hardscaping and the landscaping, they've kind of changed the walkway. So you're able to kind of get out the door and lead into an existing pathway. Okay, so these are the landscape and hardscape changes that affect Building 9 North and 9 South. And then so we see here, this is existing. They originally had 2 walkways here, and they've just been changed to 1. And they, as Mr. Cavelli mentioned, you know, their ADA access was relocated here. These are the Secretary of the Interiors. I did mention earlier, these are new construction buildings. So there's no concern with any historic integrity or any changes to the modifications of the structures because these have not been built yet. But for visual compatibility purposes, you know, we did look at this regarding not so much the streetscape, but the structures, the historic structures that were on site. And because of that, we had two concerns, and that was mostly on Building 9 North and 9 South, was the arched doors that were being removed, just mostly because the style was created after the Cathcart House. The Anglo-Caribbean architectural style is shown on these structures, so we just felt like this was a design style that kind of removed a little bit of that design, so that was a concern with that, as well as buildings 8 North, 8 West, and 8 South with the Juliet balconies. Okay, so I can go here. So these were the arched doors. This is existing and proposed. Here we have close-ups. We understand that these were, I think maybe 2 elevations only had them, but they do give part of the design style for Anglo-Caribbean architecture. So the removal of that was a slight concern for that. And then going into the Building 8s, the removal of the Juliet balconies and the awnings in replace of vents. Once again, that's also a design style we thought was, you know, something that catered to the Anglo-Caribbean style. So we had concerns of the removals of those. I believe so, yeah. Well, they're Bahamian shutters, Michelle said. Okay, so these are the findings. Oh, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. That was quite extensive. Any public comment? No public comment. All right. Any rebuttals, Mr. Cavalli?
I have none.
Okay. And staff?
No rebuttal from staff.
I have kind of a general question, and maybe Kelly and Michelle can help me with this. It seems like much of this is more or less administrative in its aspect of making the doorways square, or the compactor had to be moved. What caused that to rise to the level that it became a board issue?
Because they're elevations that are visible from an adjacent right-of-way. We were on the fence about an admin approval for this. Initially, when it came in, when we were working through and processing these changes, Chapter 2 hadn't been modified to allow staff administrative authority on landscape plans. Now we do have some administrative authority there. But the thing I think that is our biggest concern is as the project develops over time, any kind of dilution of architectural details, we feel that the board should be made aware of, because if it becomes a cumulative effect, then, you know, we're losing that Anglo-Caribbean detailing on the building. The arches, I think, were important details, the arched windows and doors. So for us, we felt rather than take responsibility and have a board member say, who approved this, we would pass it to the board. Now, obviously, if it's the board's discretion tonight to say, in the future, we think you can handle this, you know, then we will certainly take that into consideration. But we didn't want the first edit to their plans to go the other way. We wanted to bring it to you.
Well, perhaps we can discuss that afterwards in
Sure.
comments. Sure. And I'm assuming there will, given the size of the project, there will be other issues like this that will emerge. So, you know, it might be pertinent for our own purposes to make some sort of a decision tonight.
And there is an application in process that affects Block 61, the historic homes, primarily outdoor dining space that's coming through. completely shifting. This is not under your purview for tonight. It's a future agenda item, but you should be aware it's coming. The Block 69 and Block 70 portions of the project that weren't under the last review are now in and getting close to coming before the board. So those are bigger pieces to the puzzle. But there's certain levels of that we can't approve administratively. It's not a building permit comment by fire that affected openings or grading. They're much bigger. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's let the board discuss this a
Please,
little
yes.
bit. John.
My feelings are the changes are relatively modest. I actually like the cleaner look, especially where those Juliettes were taken away. I think it's a little less busy. I'd like to hear what the architectural professionals on the board have to say about the arched doorways, but I kind of agree that I don't see how they belong here, but that's just me. Overall, I think the changes are pretty modest. The project this big, you're going to come across this stuff and you want to make sure that everything works and works well. So now's the time to make the changes, and I agree with it. So, this is all new. It's all coming out of the ground. There's nothing being modified. I'm, if I'm in favor of this overall. I mean, the real concerns I had with this were answered about 6 years ago. So.
Kristen.
I'm going to yield to Ivan first because he does have that architectural background. So I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
So Kristen and John, so talking about the arch windows, I think a building has to decide what it wants to be, right? It can't be everything to everybody. And I'm a Miami native. I'll bring up an example: the Bakery Center in South Miami. It was like a hodgepodge of different architectural themes, and it really didn't address anything. So I think that the arches are probably not the right element for this building. And I understand staff's preference for them and bringing in the element, but I'm not opposed to making it a much simpler design and making it cohesive throughout the architecture of the building. I do have a question about process, Michelle. So this has been through, and I think Jim alluded to this. This has been through the building department and through fire, and then they put a stop on it and says, "Hold on, you're changing this. Go back to the board." So
the fire didn't say go back to the board. Fire made comments that were in relation to the life safety plan, and specifically, you can see like on the plan here, these stairwells, staircases, entry doors, exit doors, things like that. So because those elements, if it was a single staircase, I would have been like, just update the plan and move it along. But it became a little cumulative. So at that point, it was staff's decision. We consulted with our director. We think, that this needs to elevate to the board, and that's what the decision was made, that it has to come here for the elevation change.
So, and I don't know if it's the purview of this board, but for example, this just came up to mind. You're eliminating doors in an occupancy. Does that affect the means of egress so that's all been vetted? So if we approve that, it's all okay. All right. That's the only question I had. I think the changes are in line.
Okay.
Yeah, to be honest, I thought
Well, now you're coming back in.
I'm going to jump back in. To be honest, I thought the arches were maybe the original plans, because those plans a long time ago had so many different things going on that, like he said, the building didn't even know what it was. There were so many different design elements. I'm okay with losing the arches as well, because the Cathcart house, to my knowledge, doesn't have arches.
I don't think so.
Correct, Michelle?
So to be clear, the Cathcart house is a French colonial architectural style. Anglo-Caribbean is a related architectural style to French colonial. So what we see in the buildings facing Atlantic, buildings 1, 2, and 3, the 3-story buildings, those kind of give that nod to that French colonial kind of Anglo-Caribbean. These structures are the Anglo-Caribbean that's a little bit more of a modern interpretation of the style. So what you don't get to see on these drawings, and it's kind of hard to show, are things like the parapets up at the rooftop here, which are like, they're structural looking, right? Arch openings, they are reminiscent of the Anglo-Caribbean style with those French doors and divided lights on windows openings, colonial type of window patterns. So those things brought together, Juliet balconies with brackets underneath, those are reminiscent of the Anglo-Caribbean style. And as you start to dilute some of the elements, you want to make sure you don't accidentally fall into like masonry vernacular, right? Because that's not what was approved.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Any more?
Nope, not right now.
To be returned. Yes. Chris?
Yes, I'm okay with the changes of taking away the arches and keeping it more simple. I think having the arch next to a rectangular window was a little much, so I'm okay with that. I noticed in one of the staff comments that when I see landscape, I just go right to it. It says the addition of landscaping and palms to provide light and partial shade for the areas suggested would be an improvement. What area was that for?
I believe it was for the Building 8 landscaping.
Let me get over here. Is it this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they do meet all requirements, but it was mostly just a suggestion just to, maybe give a little bit more shade or, but the landscape planner did review this and it did meet all requirements.
The senior landscape planner,
landscape. Yes.
These are at two different scales, right? The right side is zoomed in a little bit more. Are all those trees being removed in the blue from the left-hand side?
I think we should ask Mr. Cavelli, who's the landscape architect expert.
I'm very confused by this drawing. I don't believe any of those trees are being removed. The building got wider, and on the north side of the northernlymost building, the little skinny planter kind of went away, and it's just walkway in there. But on the south side, the only thing that got reconfigured was the walkway. If you stop back,
go
here,
ahead.
Here, let me.
Here
now. Right. I went too far. Hang on. Which way am I going?
I think.
I got to go backward. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There we go. Right there. Those sidewalks got reconfigured where the yellow is, and that's the only place that it really changed. But let me get to the here. Here you go. Here, if you see where the yellow is.
Can I zoom in here on one of these?
Yeah.
Like say right here.
In this one, where that yellow square is in the walkway, that walkway disappeared, and that became more landscaping. So in that area, landscaping increased, and the entry to that sidewalk, if you slide over, Michelle, could you slide over to the slide to the right, please? You can see where the landscape area got larger, and then the yellow is where the ramp was moved to, but it's narrower. So in this particular case, there was an increase in landscaping on this reconfiguration. So it's really just pushing things around. Now you can see where the other yellow square is to the upper right, and you can see all the trees are still there. It's just the sidewalk got reconfigured.
feel
So-
like the comment, and maybe what we could do, because this would be something that could be handled administratively, is maybe we could have a conversation with David and Mike to address, because what is coming to mind, I'm not sure is what he meant, Mr. Glover, our senior landscape planner, but I think what he was talking about had to do with the center courtyard. So I don't want to guess at the board meeting. These are things that we can address if the board gives us direction to handle administratively.
And the center courtyard didn't change.
Okay.
So,
So I don't even know.
yeah.
Well, yeah, where I think landscape area was altered, that or where hardscape was added and landscape was removed, that maybe it could be thought of if some additional landscape areas could bring some more green, because it seems like maybe there's more hardscape here than it was before.
That's exactly right. If I may I address that? Catherine had just opened up their plan set. That is exactly right. So some of the foundation plantings that were right up against the building have been pulled off of the building with the hardscape adjacent to the building. And I think that these were some conversations that happened at staff level with David Glover about that.
But if I may, any place where the landscaping was pulled away from the foundation are not required foundation planting areas. Only the areas facing a right-of-way is a foundation planting area. So nothing was done contrary to code. It's just things got moved around, and in some of those areas, like I just showed you, the landscaping increased. So it's a trade.
Yeah.
Well, I'm confused now.
I still would like to see, I would like to see maybe some more landscaping on the facade. I do see some areas that maybe it could be added, and I'm going off of staff's recommendation that some additional trees could add some softening of the corners of the building. So it's just something that I think would be helpful to certain areas.
Like these yellow areas right here, those are facing Southwest First Street. And the foundation planting isn't against the building. The walkway is, and the plantings are pulled away from the building. They're flipped, which was acceptable.
Right. Right, because you still have the very large landscape area
All
to the
this.
street side.
But the one slide that shows before and after, where the before has trees and the after just has hardscape, that's the one that confused me.
That's confused me as
It
well.
was different scales.
Yeah,
So
the one is zoomed in
trees are
on,
still
you just don't see
So
the
the trees are still there.
Yeah.
So I think
They would
that,
be
Because I think staff used the word over landscaped, and that's what kind of caught my attention.
No, the cropping is wrong because the trees were cut off of the red slide.
actually, I don't know that it's fully a cropping issue. I think that this is a site plan compared to a landscape plan,
Right.
not a landscape plan compared to a landscape plan.
Okay.
Right.
That should have been landscape to landscape.
So the answer is those trees are not disappearing.
Correct.
Any comments?
I don't have any comments.
All right.
I think we've settled everything. Kristen, since you've been leading this, do you want to make a motion?
Well, can I just ask something? There was still the comment about extra landscaping could be an improvement. Is that something we would like to consider adding as a condition that the staff can approve?
I mean, I think it could be some direction that you provide. Do you think it needs to be a condition?
I think we just have to be careful with like designing from the dais. So as long as, I mean, if you think it's something that's within the design guidelines or the land development regulations that they're not meeting, then I think you can add it as a condition. If you think it just, would be better than, design-wise, then I think it kind of leans into the designing from the dais.
But would the applicant be willing to consider it?
Here's an item that you need to keep in mind, that these buildings are on top of the parking deck. So adding landscaping isn't digging a hole. It's a whole other element of providing a planter that has a drain at the bottom, a drain at the top, that has certain kinds of configurations. So we would really like it if we could leave the landscape as it's presented, primarily because just even adding a small planter in certain areas is a huge undertaking.
And that includes the corners that Chris was asking about?
Yeah, because what we've done is we've actually taken, it's just a couple of the corners where it's moved out, but remember, when you start stacking more landscaping and more planters and more weight, at some point you got to start looking at structural elements and all those things.
I totally understand that. I just feel when you walk, when I put myself in this space, I walk up these steps and I'm going to that center courtyard, it just feels like it's so much hardscape. Once I pass that tree-lined area, I get into the space and there's no landscaping anymore. What are those center rectangles? Is that a water feature or landscape?
It's landscaping.
It's landscaping?
Yeah.
So that's the only space with it?
May I say something?
Yes.
If he has a question. Do you have a question for him?
Yes, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Some of this could be handled with container plants too. I think
exactly.
I think I would just like to
well.
really have an opportunity to understand what the senior landscape planner had identified, because we may be completely missing the mark. But he was talking about additional shade to help soften the buildings. So, maybe I think you originally asked, how do you address this? I think you just maybe say to us, give direction that we coordinate with the senior landscape planner to make sure his concerns are addressed.
Perfect.
Maybe it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think it should be in the motion so that, just so it's formalized.
As a
Sorry.
condition? As a condition? Or direction?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, they could add a site plan technical item.
Okay.
All right.
That works for me.
That's fine.
So then it doesn't have to be in the motion.
That's right.
And I think they can do that with just direction from you guys if
Okay.
everybody's kind of on board with that.
All right.
We're good with that.
It looks like everybody is. So yeah, just the motion. Then.
Okay. I move to approve the level 1 site plan, landscape plan, architectural elevations, and certificate of appropriateness 2023-181 for the property located at Sunday Village, Block 61, Old School Square Historic District, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Second.
Call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
John Miller,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia,
Yes.
John Brewer is absent, Jim Chart.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time and patience.
Okay, so our next to last item on the agenda is item 8D, which is for 159 Marine Way. This is the city marina. I'd like to enter file number COA 2023-213 into the record. It's a COA and a level 2 site plan application. This is a city-initiated project, so we have engineer Isaac Kovner from the city here, as well as representatives from WGI, who is the city's consultant, working on the Marine Way and City Marina projects. So if you want to ask for ex parte while we get set up.
None.
None.
No. None.
Haven't talked to Isaac in years.
None.
None.
Okay, Isaac, it's your show.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman and board members. My name is Isaac Kovner with City of Delray Beach Public Works. I'm the project manager for the historic Marine Way seawall, roadway, drainage, and improvements project. I've been working closely with the Waltman Group for a number of years now on this project. We've finally got to achieve 100% plans, and we're ready to present our project to the Historic Board for their approval. At this time, I'd like to introduce Brett Alford from WGI to continue with the presentation.
Thanks, Isaac.
Brett Oldford, WGI 2035, Vista Parkway, West Palm Beach. So this is the first time I've given the presentation to this board. It's a presentation that's probably been well vocalized with city staff. We've given it to the commission at times before, and then the project stalled a little bit during the pandemic, so we had to actually go back to each commissioner and the mayor individually at times. So now you guys get to see it collectively, so I'm excited about that. We'll try to get through it as informationally as possible and as quickly as possible, because I know it's getting late. So again, Marine Way, the project, it's a resiliency project. I think everybody here has seen what happens to Marine Way in king tide events and seen the flooding and knows what's going on with the elevations. This is shot from the south heading up the intercoastal, and then up in the top left is just one of the early renderings that we created as an idea for what we wanted to gain out of this project. This is an aerial image showing really the initial focus of our project was that North Marineway section north of Southeast 1st Street. But in addition to that, we've had to add some elements to South Marineway that's shown in that southern ellipse as well. Just the historical issues: flooding during rain events, king tide, high tide events, almost any tide event that you get out there. There was a historical seawall that was there. It was in disrepair. It was listing seaward out into the intercoastal. And then the roadway, that caused issues with the roadway. And you can see in that middle image, if I can zoom in on it, the edge of the road is just deteriorating and falling into the intercoastal. So these images were from, I think, September of 2000 or October of 2019 during the king tide event. You can see we're up on the north side by deck 84. In this image, you can see the water level is above the catch basin. It's because it can't discharge because the intercoastal is higher than the catch basin. And then this is with my back to deck 84 looking south, and you can see the water levels halfway up the mailbox pole and obviously into front yards, and as a matter of fact into a building, residential building or two. So the upgrades that we've proposed, there's a typo here. The proposed seawall elevation is now 4.2, consistent with the city's ordinance. So the original design was 3.8. It is now 4.2. And the structure is built so it's raisable an additional 18 inches in the future. We have a stormwater pump station that's being installed as part of this project. A shared use that's pedestrian and vehicular paver brick pathway, really connecting the elements of the city marina up to Veterans Park on the north side of Atlantic Avenue. It's the one real, the missing piece between that connectivity. Roadway, water and sewer improvements, pedestrian lighting, landscaping, and we also relocated the existing city marina electrical panel from the center of the city marina south, out of the way, out of the view shed of the marina itself, and we'll get into that in a little bit. A little bit about the pump station. There are, it's proposed with two 18,000 gallon per minute pumps, expandable to 3 pumps in the future if the need arises. We have to have an emergency backup generator to provide power in the case of power failure. And we're manifolding several existing outfalls, individual outfalls into the intercoastal, into the pump station and discharging through one discharge pipe. It'll serve the area directly to the marina and the Marina Historic District west of Marineway as well. Here's some renderings from it. You'll see that we're maintaining the Marina District off-street parking or on-street parking on the west side of the roadway. We have valley gutter, paver brick roadway. We have an F-curb, raised F-curb on the east side, landscaping strip. And what we tried to do is we had some images from 1920 of the landscaping along Marine Way. We tried to emulate that, keep that as close to that fabric as we could through this. And we wanted to maintain as much of that mangrove section as we could. And the impacts are absolutely minimal to the mangroves there, so we did a very good job doing that. Maintain the existing dock and didn't impact the navigable waterway. Design plans. Buckle up here. We got 98 sheets we got to get through, so I know it's late. No, I'm kidding. We brought in just a select few of the plan sheets, made sure that you guys understood exactly what's going on, and to talk really about the intent of what we're talking about here. And that's at the very south end of the project. That is the generator building that supports the pump station. It is south of the existing Dockmasters building at the City Marina. So this is north is up on this one. This is where we're talking about, and the Dockmaster building is currently up to the north here, and this is at the very south end where Marine Way and Southeast 2nd Street intersect. You'll see the structure is a roofless structure. It's mostly for security for the generator and sound attenuation for the infrequent time that the generator actually has to kick in. Again, it's an emergency generator. It's not intended to run on any consistent basis other than the regular maintenance intervals. The top of wall elevation's 18. The existing elevations around the building itself are about anywhere from 2 to 2.5. So realistically, the building wall itself is about 15.5 to 16 feet in height. A large part of that is because the generator has to be at the FEMA finished floor elevation of 7.0, which you heard earlier tonight as well because of the flood zone. This really is the electrical cabinet that we were talking about being relocated to the south end. I know in our public outreach meetings during the early part of the Marine Way project and during the completion of the City Marina, we heard a lot of residents saying they really would like to get that out of there if they could. It was larger than they expected when it was built, so we accommodated that within these plans. You'll see that the electrical panels are along this wall of the generator building right now. So that's where we're going to relocate them to. Landscaping is going to be consistent with the landscaping in the marina right now. And the only other change is, I guess what you'd want to address is there's an existing gazebo on the north end of the marina right there where our discharge pipes are going to go. All we're going to do is deconstruct it and reinstall it once the drainage pipes, discharge pipes are installed. This is emergency access to the Deck 84 parking lot at the north end. That was a requirement for emergency vehicles and fire. It'll be bollard protected, so it's not going to be a common thoroughfare for rideshare residents, anybody in the public. And then this is a rendering as you travel east on Southeast 2nd Street, heading toward the marina. You can see the building in front of you. Adjacent on the left-hand side is the existing Dockmasters building. And then this is from the north looking south at the Dockmasters building and then the proposed enclosure for the generator building as well. The walls, they're going to be CMU walls consistent with the coloring and finish as the Dockmaster building adjacent to it. Any of the fences are going to be consistent with what is out there right now. As that's what's projected in the proposed in the plans right now. There's an aerial kind of isometric image of what's proposed. And then again, some renderings of what the project, this is North Marine Way. This is what it's going to look like when it's finished. This is nighttime. The property line isn't going to be illuminated by an LED light. That's just to make sure you guys understand where the property line is between the residents and the public right of way. These are the gazebos. That's going to be the one that's removed and replaced, not replaced, sorry, reconstructed, put back in the same place it was before. The gazebo at the south end is not going to be impacted by the construction. And then the refuse area, the existing refuse area for the marina will be moved, but it'll be consistent with the type of area that you see here, the existing. And then this is just the current image of what it looks like heading, looking east along Southeast 2nd Street. And that's my presentation.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
We don't generally have the city as the applicant.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know what staff wants to do here, but I'm assuming that they concur in this, or they don't have a separate presentation? We do. Oh, you do?
I'll be expeditious with it. Because it's nice if we are able to get out of here by 9, right? All right, so there are just more so for me a little background in history for the board that some of you may remember, others may not. This came through, a similar improvement project came through with board approval previously. In fact, the city, did they win the award, or they were nominated for the award for the improvements that were made to the marina? I think they may have won it. It was gazebos, all new seawalls, landscape improvement. And as you know, Mr. Olford has described that this is a longer project and that it's taken, phases to get the seawall improvements in place to create some more resiliency for the neighborhood. So those are some of the things I just want to touch on. Plus, we want to touch on the generator building, so it's really clear. Not that he wasn't clear, but just so that we have an opportunity to touch on that. But the focus of this is from 2nd Street to 1st Street, that stretch where the boat slips are. The portion that's extending north of 1st Street, Marine Way, direct intercoastal, that is largely going to be handled straight through permit because it involves right-of-way improvements with landscaping. So there's really not a lot for the board to review or engage on that hasn't already been seen. So these are some photographs just of existing conditions. Obviously, the one on the left here, this photograph, is the location of the new generator, and we want to make sure that it's documented on record at this point that there is a residence there adjacent to the property. And the city has done outreach over the years with meetings and door hangers and different ways to outreach, and we haven't heard anything back from these owners that I'm aware of. These gazebos that were previously approved will be dismantled and put back in place throughout the site once some of the underground and ground level improvements are completed. The Dock Master building, this is midway, but I'm going to skip to this. You can see this Dock Master building right here with adjacent parking. We do have 2 space reduction in parking happening right adjacent to that Dock Master building in order to accommodate this new open air generator enclosure structure. It's hard for me to call it a building because it's really almost a large scale enclosure that you might see with like a refuse container area. Lacking the roof, it's an enclosure, but it does somewhat have appearance of a building. What you don't see that's obscured by landscaping that's well buffered is that there is an entry door here on the west and an entry door on the east that's accessed by stairs. Because there's the stairs, because of this area within the AE flood zone, it sits up high, again, at that 7-foot level. So similar to the discussion we had about mechanical equipment that's much smaller for the other project, this is a much larger scale project. So you can see here the way the building actually sits, right? And there used to be 8 spaces of parking here and the 2 that were removed in order to accommodate this. This generator is 17 foot 6 by 7 by 10 foot high. So it's a very big structure. This is doing the heavy lift to pull water off of the streets and off of the area and get it pushed back out during king tide events or heavy water events. You can see that the enclosure itself is 20 by 26 feet. It is a CBS wall. There is you can see right here, ability for a worker or some staff member to be able to get in and walk around the inside of the generator. The other important piece of this project is some of you may remember that there was electrical panels installed in the center of this overall project that we got a lot of backlash from residents that it was impeding their view. So all of that electrical equipment is being moved to the exterior wall of the generator enclosure with landscaping around it, so to help soften and improve that response to the neighbors, so that we're listening, we're hearing what you're saying, we're trying to find a solution to that. So also just to note, there is a site plan certification item that we are adding as part of this presentation, just because in the fine-tuned look at things today before we came to the board, there's a couple of spots where one plan sheet says the wall height is 8 feet and another one says it's 9 feet. So we're just asking that they go through the set and make sure that the structural details are consistent. This is really just a summary of what we've written. We've worked very closely with the applicant to ensure that this meets setback requirements. For the CF zoning district, there is a perimeter setback requirement of 10 feet, and that is being met on the south property line and obviously on the north, west, and east. So these are just additional scale drawings. We thought in case you wanted to talk anything about gazebos or trellis features that are part of this proposal. There's a site plan technical item you'll note about obtaining the proper easement or approval or something like that in relation to the Deck 84 end of the project, because Marine Way is being adjusted slightly to provide for a fire access, a life safety access drive through the Deck 84 property. And so the city is working to obtain the proper approvals to make that extension. Landscaping it met the requirements of the code. The senior landscape planner has reviewed, and while it is a city project and we do have a city consultant, we still have to put it through the review process for a COA and the site plan review and approval. So we put the info here in case somebody had questions or wanted to zero in on any of those details. I think that is the bulk of what we have to say. It's an accessory type building. We find that it's consistent with the visual compatibility standards, and it can be considered consistent with the standards and the guidelines from the Secretary of the Interior. And that concludes my presentation.
So I do not see any members of the public here that might make comments. Mr. Cope, come on up.
Hanging in till the end.
I think of him as an applicant, not a...
I know, he's a fixture here.
Yeah.
That's a compliment. Thank you. I guess for the record, Roger Cope Architects, Inc. It's 701 Southeast 1st Street in the National Marina Historic District, right around the corner. First of all, I just want to simply compliment the collaboration between our city and Mr. Kovner and the general contractor. I mean, we've all witnessed what I would define as phase one, all that work that was the elevation of the seawall north of the bridge, extremely successful in my opinion. And then phase two would be the marina and everything south of First Street. So this is, and how incredibly successful that was. I mean, it proved to me that this is the right contractor for, if nothing else. So I'm very excited that phase three has come along after all these years. So kudos to the city, kudos to the team for pulling this whole thing off. I've got three really simple questions. Where does the brick paver driveway end at the southern edge of its limitations? I know it starts at Deck 84. I'm just a little bit unsure where it ends on Marine Way. Does it end somewhere near First, or does it?
I think, why don't you go through all your questions and then.
That's the only design question. The other two questions are very, very simple. When can this start? When will this start? And the most important question, when will it end? Thanks.
Isaac or Brett, is that ending at the intersection of Marine Way and First Street?
And First Street, yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Does it turn the corner somehow, or?
It turns the corner and there's a header. Turns the corner and there's a header curb. That draws the end, because really one of the big things we wanted to make sure is that general public didn't think that Marine Way North was a through street, right? So we wanted to have some a visible barrier there that showed a difference. So that's why we didn't carry that all the way down through Marine Way South.
That makes sense.
Start date, end date?
Isaac can probably talk to this better, but I know the city is anxious to put the bid package together and get that advertised shortly.
That's correct. We're working with finalizing permitting, and we're looking to advertise probably the spring of '24, and it's a 2-year project, anticipated 2-year project.
So
it's a huge project. Yeah. Thank you.
Is it safe to assume there are no rebuttals here?
Oh, no, I have none.
Okay. So to the board, I'd actually like to open up on this one a little bit. Other than Mr. Cope, who has a home there, I don't see any city residents here. And I know that the Marine Way people tend to be fairly critical. So I'm assuming from what you, I was being subtle. I'm assuming that you have spoken with them quite a bit, and we will not find people, when this does move forward to the city commission, saying that they weren't consulted.
So the Public Works Department has held meetings, I want to say ad nauseum, but it's probably not the right word.
Yeah,
There have
scratch that.
been meetings over the years about this project and this plan. I've been to some of them. There have been so many, I haven't been able to make all of them. We also mailed a courtesy notice to the Marina Historic District Neighborhood Association. We emailed them, as we do any kind of project in the Marina Historic District. We've heard no feedback at all from that. So I think we've done the pieces of notification that we need to, and we have not heard feedback.
Okay. Okay.
I might add, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Certainly.
I might add to that, not only did we email and try to get in touch with everybody as much as we could through our public outreach meetings, we did door hangers, we tried to reach them in every physical possible way we could throughout the process. I know WGI has been involved since 2007. I myself, since 2015, we've probably had at least 8 or 9 public outreach meetings with the...
That were well attended.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
Okay. Just a simple question. The pipes are putting the water back in the intercoastal?
If you wanted to say we are pumping the ocean back into itself,
Yes,
you'd be
that's what I want to
correct.
say.
Yeah, correct.
If you ever want to observe this in action, Isaac, what is the street that's right near Seabreeze with the pump station? Is that
Basin.
Lang or Basin?
Thomas isn't constructed yet, though.
Yeah, but it's existing.
Is it Thomas Street?
It is a Thomas Pump Station.
Yeah, so I've been out during a King Tide event specifically I just watch it. You can, at that time I could walk and see the water pumping out. It's pretty impressive what happens. So the machine is there, it comes on, and it takes the water out of the storm drains and pushes the water back into the intercoastal. So if you were ever interested to see it, and it's coming out a pipe, a huge pipe, the water's just dumping back into the intercoastal.
But can we assume that the water is going out faster than it comes back in?
Okay, yeah, so realistically, raising the seawall, that's what's going to prevent
the intrusion from the high tide events, the king tide events. The main reason for the stormwater pump station is now that we've raised the seawall, we had all this historical inland flow that would just gravity runoff into the intercoastal that we are stopping. We are providing a barrier there, so now we are capturing that with a stormwater pump station that's going to discharge it. The seawall is the main level of protection for the city, for the land, from sea level rise.
But doesn't the water also come up through the stormwater system and through the grates?
So it does, because their discharge is tied directly into the intracoastal. We are manifolding them and running them through the pump station now, so that will no longer be the case. We are also installing exfiltration pipe, slotted pipe, that will help the groundwater recover, because the groundwater will now drain into the pipe and then get into the stormwater pump station as well.
But that's over time, that's not during the high tide event, right?
Correct, but again, the raising of the, flap gates, we have flap gates on the discharge structures as well. So short of raising the entirety of all of the property, we're pretty much taking every measure we can to try to protect that adjacent area from sea level rise.
I recall in phase 1, there were mangroves that were removed.
So phase 1 would have been Veterans Parkway. I think.
Well, then maybe it was phase 2, but it was in the Marine Way area.
Okay, so
and the basic question here is: are we going to have more or fewer mangroves when phase 3 is over?
Right now, the proposed impact over the 800 linear foot section of that roadway is 355 square feet. So realistically, maybe 4 inches across that 800 feet linear are we actually impacting. And a lot of those mangroves are combined with seaside, some landscape, seaside meho, is that what it's called? Meho? Yeah, it's a shrub. It's a shrub. Anyway, some of the major impacts are happening up on the northern side of where Deck 84 is, where we have the other vegetation mixing in with the mangroves as well. So the actual mangroves impacts is less than 355 square feet for that entire stretch.
Okay. And my last question is noise. When the generator, noise, and how are they powered if there's no electricity? So when those kick in, I'm assuming that's fairly noisy.
So when the generator will kick in, it will be under the emergency condition where we don't have any power. While they run, they absolutely could produce audible noise, without a doubt. In general, the pump station is going to be run off of FP&L power, so you will not hear them running in the standard condition. But when we do lose power and we do require the backup generator, you will hear it. There will be an audio.
And the fuel is stored on site?
Yes, directly adjacent to it. See the fuel vault?
It's a
to the left.
It's diesel.
Yep.
How many gallons?
I knew somebody was going to ask me that. It is what's the duration we're required?
I think it's a 72 hour.
72 hours.
Okay. Right.
1,000 gallons, bro.
What's that?
1,000 gallons.
I think it's more.
Yeah,
it's a big tank.
It's a big tank.
Is the tank underwater or underground?
No, it's in the above ground enclosure.
Yeah, it's a dual walled above ground convault. But also, I'd like to add with the generator, once a week, the generator has to go through a cycle. It doesn't go to load, but it turns on for about an hour just to go through the cycle process. It doesn't stay on for any period of time, but once a week it does go through the test. But like Brett says, when the power fails, then the generator will be used until the power gets restored.
Or it runs out of fuel.
No, the Public Works is responsible for refueling. We would never let the generator go out of fuel.
Okay. All right.
If there's still a road there.
Can I jump in?
Please.
All right, thank you.
And then Kristen.
So again, thanks to staff and and WGI for all your work on this. I do have lots of questions and comments. I guess we'll start with the sound. It is pretty loud. I've heard it. I don't know if it's similar to those that are installed in buildings, a generator, but I've seen baffles and mufflers installed. I think we should definitely consider that because I think the sound can get offensive to the neighbors. These things get exercised once a week, you're right. I think sound is going to be a problem. So we need to address that.
Well, I'm pretty sure there's a decimal rating per our codes that you can't exceed a certain amount of decimals, and I'm sure it's a self-contained enclosure, and either the muffler or whatever the sound attenuator is part of that generator. It's not just a loud noise. It's designed to accommodate the minimal decimal approval through the generator. It's not just a generator. The sound attenuator is with it.
No, I know that, but in addition to that, we can install a muffler or some sort of baffle for the exhaust so that sound gets attenuated even more. In addition to whatever the generator comes with.
We can look
just
at
a suggestion.
Yes.
Okay. The height of the generator building is pretty tall. I did notice some landscaping. I'll let Chris talk about that. The building's pretty plain. I'm wondering if we can, again, I know I'm going to take some latitude here because the city's the client, so put a little bit of a roof, kind of similar to the gazebo design, so it kind of all looks cohesive and similar, not just four walls sticking up in the air. Just a thought. I think we're missing some opportunities with the walkway. I think we can install benches, maybe do a wall design a little bit. Are the light poles consistent and cohesive with the other locations throughout the city, like the beach path? So I would like to amenitize the walkway a little bit more rather than just being, brick pavers. Because I go to Deck 84 all the time and I walk that path, and it would be nice to have folks, use that area. Also, the parking, is there parking there now, or are we just adding there?
So you're talking about at the Dockmaster building?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, the parallel parking
Yes.
that we're adding that?
So it is used.
You want to step up to the microphone?
Sorry, my apologies. It is used right now for on-street parking. That
Okay.
area is.
Okay.
It's not. I don't know if it's designated as such, but it is used for that.
Yeah, I think, so I know I'm throwing a lot at you. I think it should be much more pedestrian friendly. Again, benches, maybe bike path, wall design, light design, more of an amenity to the city than just the wall. And see if we can do something with the.
I'm looking at the pain on Kelly's face.
No, it's fine. I understand that you're trying to help the city out and give a little bit more feedback than normal, and they can certainly take their feedback, but they are still bound to the same land development regulations and design guidelines as everybody else. So, just keep that in mind when you guys are making motions, that you're not designing from the dais,
But if I may, it might be a good idea for Ivan and Isaac to have a side meeting or a discussion.
I'll be open to that.
Would you be willing?
Absolutely, no problem.
Thank you.
May I add something?
Sure.
Would that be okay? So you've brought up some things that I think are important, particularly the benches and lighting and things like that. They have gone through a very particular review because of compliance with SEPTED. So crime prevention through environmental design, which is done by the police department as part of the TAC process, comments on things like lighting and benches. They don't want to see benches that don't have dividers, and the design ideas is that we're not creating niches and areas for people to sleep. The gazebos and trellises and other features that are within the overall context of the project do have spaces like that. So I was out recently and taking some photographs of flooding, and I noticed that you can go and sit inside of the gazebos. So there are spaces available. The parking part of this project, I think that's really important to note, is that not only is this an improvement project to improve resiliency, but how this road improvement project has an effect on the neighbors who are directly on it, particularly between First and Atlantic. So the parking, that part of this design is to help provide official parking on an approved surface for those residents who don't have garages or don't have driveways. So while there is parking there, it's not, and it's public, it's not really intended for like you and me. It's intended to help support these residents who live on this road, and that's their expectation, which is why the brick was put in there too, to kind of give that look of a pedestrian feel. But what you're looking at on screen here is that's the road that we're looking at. That's not a sidewalk. Correct. So while pedestrians can move down the street, it isn't being designed where you could move down the street as a pedestrian and then rest at a bench in this particular area. So I think it was very thoughtfully designed and looked at over the course of time between the city and the residents who were there. So just some things to note, because this has been a long process. And I think you had indicated something about the roof with the gazebo, and that might be, I don't know if Brett or Isaac want to reply. I don't know that the structure can be enclosed.
Yeah, I believe we do have some limitations on enclosing that structure. The second part of this is the potential of making a very tall structure taller, and being more impactful visually.
Not trying to design, but open beams and open, it doesn't have to be enclosed, or, it could be beam with, anyways. So I'm going to be quiet now. But yes.
Well, I don't think you have to be quiet. I
No.
think you're making valid points that you want to see a building that appears very utilitarian in nature have some type of architectural design integrity. So I think that's something that we certainly can work with the applicant on to incorporate. I think it's a very fair comment.
Yeah, I think as long as you're looping your critiques in with land development regulations and how they're meeting the design guidelines, then those are acceptable critiques. You just can't be just simply designing from up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but we are a historic board, and I'm trying to add historic context to walls and
Understood.
elements.
That the structure is appropriate for the historic district it's in, which is a fair comment, because when this came through the first time, the roofs were painted metal, weren't they?
Yeah.
And the board gave direction for the gazebo roofs to be mill finish so that it would be appropriate for the historic district. So I think what you're saying is fully acceptable. We can discuss that with the team.
Ivan made another point, though, that I think is really, really important, and that is this should be very pedestrian friendly. It's one of the attractive features of our city. And to be able to walk from the north end of Veterans Park to the south end of Marina Way is a considerable area and should be filled with pedestrians on a sunny day. So pedestrians need to be encouraged by some planting, some benches and things like that. I think this is an opportunity for us as the city and us as the historic board to enhance our historic district. And I thank you, Ivan.
I agree with a lot of those comments. I think it's a great project. We need to raise the seawalls to stop the flooding issues. I know I try to walk under the bridge many times to get to Veterans Park from Deck 84, and it's flooded on a sunny day, so
Right.
that'll be raised too, right?
Correct. We're going to have improvements, and we're going to have lighting included. It's dark.
Yeah,
as well.
that too.
Yep.
And smelly. And
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I love that. Making it very pedestrian friendly, I think, is very important. So, yeah, there's a portion that doesn't have a sidewalk, right? You have to walk on the street.
Correct.
To get to this other portion. Maybe that's the only way with the space that we have. So, I don't know if there's another way around that one.
The difficulty there is really one of the only alternatives we have is to push further into the mangroves.
And we don't want that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
The mangrove cutting back, you said 300 square feet or so. Is
Yes.
that because you're putting a new road there and you need to cut some roots off of it?
For the installation of the seawall itself. Yep. We have to go vertical
But it's
on
just
that.
trimming a
And
little bit.
and it's just all, you're exactly right. It's just mangroves that have migrated because of the soil condition and sea level rise. It has migrated to the west into the road base.
Okay. The two major comments I have are the landscaping. It does seem like it's lacking. I see only two types of plants along Marineway, cocoa plum and thatch palm. I love those plants, but I don't know, it feels maybe I would like to see more variety there. More native variety would be great. And then with the huge generator structure, I realize it has to be that size. It probably has to be in that location because there's no other place for it. Were other locations considered for the placement of the building?
So we had talked about this through this during design. Unfortunately, the cost of real estate right now, again, if you're looking at taking down a lot adjacent maybe to the area to have the structure in, it's a substantial cost addition to the project. In the property that the city currently owns and maintains, really, we looked at a couple alternatives. That was the only realistic alternative that we had, viable alternative that we had.
And is it directly blocking any views from residents?
In one of the images shows, realistically, it's just as you drive east on Southeast First. That's where the obstruction is.
It used to be an open view, and now it's gonna.
Open view is, there used to be a lot of landscaping through that area. There is a gazebo in that area. There are a lot lower, but the refuse area, the trash area as well. But there is a lot of landscaping that impedes that view in the first place right now.
So this is the picture on the left. You're facing south, right? So you're looking at the location of the generator and the building, the residence that's beyond. If you were to take a left, just turn yourself to the left, this is what you see. So the view is impeded already by the existing improvements above ground that are right there. And this is at the end of this street, the one on the right. So if you did a 180 and looked the other way, you see this. So it's not anticipated to impede views. The other thing that's here is landscaping adjacent to this property that helps buffer that property from the marina and the dock master building. Part of the process that the applicant, the city as the applicant, went through was asking the neighbors where they've envisioned putting this building. And of course there were differing opinions across the board, but this was the least impactful. Because you wouldn't want to put in the center of a building in the center of the whole grassed area, which is this on the left. So that it has been talked about over the years.
Seems like the right spot. It is a very large wall. In the rendering, it seems like it's a white wall. I don't know if that is the right color if we're trying to hide it. Maybe another darker color could be considered. And the other thing I noticed is that this is a 17-foot wall with only 8-foot sea grape proposed. So I also think the landscaping is somewhat lacking. Even though it's meeting the code, I feel like it could be improved if it's within the city's budget to do so. There's no trees really, it's just these large shrubs. There's no palms around it. So I think that would beautify a structure that's not so appealing to the eye. So those are things that I would love to see. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but it would help me want to approve the project.
Okay.
I think, again, I think the city is open to hearing the critiques. Just when you say that, even though it's up to code, just as far as your motion, just consider the things that are, outside of the land development regulations and the design guidelines. But I still think they're here and they're listening to you, and, if you're giving feedback that can better it, then
Yeah,
they'll
because
take
historically
it.
this would have been, have more landscaping, and now it's a wall with just a monoculture hedge across, which I think is kind of outside of the historic characteristic of the area. So that's my concern.
Well, it goes to the visual compatibility standards. So if, you or I or anybody else wanted to put in a 20 by 26 foot white cube in our neighborhood in a historic district, it wouldn't be allowed, right? So this board would shoot it down. So there are some things that we understand this has to happen. This has to go here. It's a necessity because of the situation that we find ourselves in. But there are some ways to soften it, I think. Whether it's a false roof around the top that sticks out or something like that kind of, like you said, doesn't make it look like just a large dumpster enclosure. But that really wasn't what I was concerned about. The first thing I did when I saw this is I read all the way through to find out where the mangroves were. And so, huge concern of mine. I'm glad that for the most part they're going to be understood. You got to pull them away from the seawall to put a new seawall in. Hopefully there's some mitigation plans in case you got to root trim too much, you get die off, something like that. But to me, that's very important. Secondly, the pathway under Atlantic Avenue to Veterans Park. It, as everybody said, it's dark, it's unsafe. Yep. There are unhoused individuals sitting up underneath there. I don't know if that can be blocked off so nobody can get up underneath there. Just to make it a more attractive, safe, and friendly way. We had a situation where a woman was, I believe, badly hurt on Atlantic Avenue trying to cross over the roadway about a year ago. There's a walkway probably less than 150 feet from where she was hit, but nobody knows about it, nobody wants to use it. It's a health and safety thing as well, especially with all of the new construction that's going on over there at Atlantic Plaza, I guess it would be called now. So, overall, I'm in supportive of it. I'm glad the mangroves are being saved. I think the beautification is going to help. One other question is, have you guys done some type of elevation study? Because obviously water's going to find the lowest point, and so you can raise a seawall for a quarter mile. When that quarter mile's over, water's going to come in. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. Yeah. So going to the south or even the north, are there any private residences that you've identified as weak points there that are going to flood this area?
So and Isaac can probably speak to this better. I know that the city along the intercoastal has about 20 miles of seawall within the limits of the city. The city-owned portion of that is just over a mile.
Yeah.
This project that we're working on right now, I think we are taking care of 90% between Veterans Park, the city marina, and Marine Way is 90% of the city-owned seawall. And I think the city's changed their ordinance now when anybody wants to do improvements to private property, or there's a timeline that they have to raise their seawall as well.
Yeah.
But
if the city's spending literally tens of millions of dollars to do this, yeah, and one homeowner refuses to do it, that's the Dutch boy's not going to be able to plug his finger in that.
It's like a pretty set of teeth, and one of them gets knocked out. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
So is there any? I mean, again, this is way beyond this board's purview, but the city needs to maybe look at mandating a certain level of sea rise. There we go.
Hi, good evening. Right? Cynthia Busan, I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works.
There we go.
So the city, as he was mentioning, owns 1 mile of seawalls. There are a total of 20 miles of seawalls, so he was accurate on those statistics. And just this past year, we updated our seawall ordinances to mandate that all seawalls new or within a certain state of disrepair must be rebuilt to 4.2 feet. So that's our new standard. In addition to that, specific to this project, each project within the city is designed within its own watershed. So the Marineway project that we're constructing here has been designed a little bit westward of here even, to take into consideration the flood protection that you were mentioning, because water does find the low spot. So there's additional drainage improvements that are going into this project that will be factored in to try to help the greater community as a part of this project. And to that end too, on the seawalls, this watershed protects itself. So once we finish filling in this gap between the city marina and Veterans Park, now this watershed will be protected. So there's still other watersheds within the city that we're working on, both publicly and privately, and those will also continue to be raised, protected with the backflow prevention devices that they also mentioned that don't allow the water to go backwards through the stormwater system and flood the streets that way. And then eventually in some areas continue to have additional stormwater pumping stations built as well.
Okay. All right, yeah, I mean, it's a tall task.
Yeah.
For sure, but I had to ask a question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Did I read somewhere, my vision's really blurred, but did I read somewhere in here that the seawall can be raised?
Yes.
18 inches.
18 inches?
Correct.
So that's in case.
The foundation for the seawall and the seawall is constructed for, in the future, sea level continues to rise. 30 years into the future, you have another 18 inches you can add to the elevation of the seawall.
Is that like
enough?
Or, yeah, I'm thinking, well, if we're gonna go 18, why not go 24? I mean, is it a cost thing?
No, I think it's a consideration that we discussed with the city early on what level is enough, and the cost of the infrastructure now versus the future benefit. And if anybody had a crystal ball and could tell you exactly where the sea level would be in 42 years, we designed so it was above that, and I think right now it's more of a
guessing game.
Yeah, I didn't want to say guessing, but
I mean, you're planning for forecasted rise, king tides, that type of thing.
Outside of 50 years from now, at least. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but catastrophic events, there's no.
Yeah. Yeah.
All bets are off, basically. If a hurricane came ashore in Deerfield and we got the north side of it with those east winds on a king tide.
Surge.
Yeah, but
there's again, there's at some point in time there's some level. I think they probably object to a 10-foot retaining wall in front of their houses. So we do what we can. Yeah. And Brian just reminded me that we did base the 18 inches off of the NOAA study on sea level rise. So there was absolutely some empirical data behind and research behind the elevation that we selected.
I want to break this off fairly soon.
Yep.
Did you have anything to say?
No, I would just echo the comments from our group. I don't have anything new to add at this point. Thank you.
Ivan, you haven't spoken up yet, right?
Oh, he did.
Oh, he did.
He
did. He did.
That was so long.
We got a list of stuff from
I did want to, before we close, pick up on one word that Chris used, which was monoculture. And we have on this board talked a little bit about tiny forests and really intensive plantings, and I think you've been involved with some over on Lake Ida Road, maybe you and Sam together. At any rate, just to have whatever they are, sea grapes or collusia or whatever, just for that whole area, there's an opportunity to make it a much more exciting and productive ecosystem, tiny ecosystem. So before Kelly shuts me off, I'd like to mention that.
The one drawback, and we did look at that, because everybody's right? We have a 18-foot structure that we're putting out there. So at one point in time, don't forget that we are moving the city electrical panel to one wall of that building. That's going to inhibit us from landscaping heavily right in front of the electrical panels. The alternative to that would be to leave the electrical panel in the middle of the city marina, and we're trying to accommodate the residents' concern in the best way possible.
Can't do it on the inside wall?
No, you can't do it on the inside wall because of security issues and access and the generator and the fuel.
So,
All right.
Okay.
Kristen?
No?
Nope, I already did one.
I'll
No,
get-
I was asking you to do a motion.
I know.
Yeah,
I already
she's
did.
passed it.
And I don't have it pulled up.
So Kelly, I have a question. Do you believe the direction that was given is sufficient, or does any of this need to be read into a motion?
I think if you have specific direction that is, you believe is related to like them not meeting the land development regulations or not meeting the design guidelines, then you should put it in the motion. If there's things that are just recommendations, I think they've heard you and they'll do, you know, what they can. But
Yeah, I think that's a no.
Yes.
Okay.
Unless, and, you know,
I
with
mean,
consideration too. if you wanna have
Consideration of
that.
guidance. Yep.
I move that we approve the Level 2 site plan, landscape plan, architectural elevations, and certificate of appropriateness 2023-213 for the property located at 159 Marine Way, which is the city marina, by finding that the request and approval thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations, with the consideration of the comments presented by the board today.
Second? Chris?
A second?
I'd just like to add a comment, potentially commenting on or addition that there be steps taken to soften the appearance of the generator enclosure to make it fit in more appropriately with the historic district. And we'll leave that to staff and the city to.
And you're in agreement with that on the second?
Yes.
is that an acceptable change? You think they can make in the condition and motion?
Yeah, and
Okay.
if we struggle, we can make a quick stop back here.
Sounds
Okay,
good.
let's call.
Yeah.
I promise it has to be
I
a
would
quick stop.
request that.
That's why I kept it broad.
Next time I'm bringing all 98 drawings, though.
We deserve that.
Was it like 150 pages?
Yeah, it was a lot.
Diane?
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
John Miller,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia,
Yes.
John Brewer is absent, Jim Chard.
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you. I just want to say, again, I want to express my appreciation for Michelle and her staff working through this process. They're a joy to work with. Thanks.
Okay, so next, agenda item 9A is a LDR text amendment for a parking exception in the West Atlantic Subdistrict of the CBD. Rebecca Desari, our principal planner in charge of our long-range planning division, is in charge of this request, and she'll enter the file into the record.
Good, excuse me. Good evening. Again, as Michelle said, my name is Rebecca Dasseria, and I am in the Long Range Planning Division, and I'm entering into the record file number 2024-029.
I'm not sure.
This-
Rebecca, is your mic on?
It is.
Okay.
I'll talk a little louder.
There you go.
So this is a city-initiated amendment.
And sorry, before you get started, I just wanted to let you guys know, I did put a copy of this on your, there were some changes made by our office, just rephrasing some of the whereas clauses and making some changes just to include that it was getting reviewed by Historic Preservation Board, that, you know, the dates of the commission meeting, those kind of things. It didn't change anything substantively, but I just wanted you guys to have the copy that'll be presented to the commission if it's approved here. And then you'll notice on the top it just says XX24. We just don't have an ordinance number yet, but we'll get that. It just because it's not going to be heard in 2023 by the commission, it needs to be a 2024 ordinance number. So sorry, go ahead, Rebecca.
No problem. So yes, as Michelle said, there is currently a parking exemption within the West Atlantic neighborhood between Southwest and Northwest 4th and Northwest and Southwest 12th Avenue. this allows existing buildings that change their use to be exempt from having to provide additional parking. And also outdoor use areas at existing buildings are exempt from providing additional parking. And it's sunset to expire in December 31st, 2023. So we're just asking to extend the exemption through 2026. So this just shows you quickly, the green area is the West Atlantic subdistrict of the CBD. And the reason we're here tonight is because a portion of that area that has the exemption is within the West Settlers Historic District. So again, this started in 2017 as a desire to spur redevelopment by providing that incentive of not having to park your area. It was extended again in 2023, and at that point the exemption to include outdoor areas was added. So now we're just requesting to add it to December 31st of 2026. We, rather than just leaving an indefinite end date for it, we opted to bring it forward with a sunset date in case development should spur to the point where it's no longer necessary and we actually need the parking. Currently there's an adequate number of the public lots that are accessible to this area, and that was the reason for the exemption in the first place, that there's ample public parking that we don't need to require it of our businesses. And there's a number of goals that apply to this. This really helps to preserve the historic form of existing structures because they aren't tempted to really max out their use, to make it the extra parking really to be able to pay for that. And just supporting small businesses who may want to use some of these small structures. Coming to you guys tonight, stopping at the Downtown Development Authority on Monday, and then Planning Board on the 18th. So this is just our request that you would provide a recommendation to the Planning Board, who will then provide a recommendation to the City Commission. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
I got a quick question. So historically speaking, over the last few years, has this been a successful incentive, I guess you could say? Have people actually mentioned it, or is it just a kind of a nice to have?
Yeah, we haven't had, I think we've had maybe one property owner, I think Zeri maybe took advantage of that for their outdoor use area and not having to increase parking. But I think more at this point, it's to be able to keep that incentive there to try to help the development happen.
Okay.
I don't think there's too much data to necessarily support it, but it's obvious on the face of it. I know Poor and Famous was probably the property that they wanted to do the back area, but they couldn't because of parking, because that would require additional parking that they didn't have. So the outdoor area that the community used, that they just couldn't park there. And then I think 404 was another one, and the idea there was to incentivize young entrepreneurs in the community to start restaurants and businesses.
Wasn't Poor and Famous already in this district though, or in this area, or this wasn't in effect at that point?
The last I knew, did not have the right to eliminate parking if they expanded into the backyard.
So I think, I'm not familiar with whether or not Poor and Famous did use this. So I think Poor and Famous and 404 probably had some issues that were maybe a lot of issues unrelated to parking.
Yes.
But that they had this does, I mean, someone else could go into those same spaces and use it now. If they were changing the use from that, they wouldn't be required to add to it.
There are big open empty lots in this district.
There's quite a lot, and I didn't have the map available for this presentation, but there are quite a lot, and they're all very underutilized, so there's still adequate opportunities to park in those.
If a big developer came and wanted to do a big building there, a big structure, would this apply to them so that they could build something? No.
No, only to existing buildings.
It's only existing. Okay, I see. All right, cool. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, right.
I'd like to. Somebody want to make a motion?
If you can just say, like, during your motion, just of the ordinance as amended that we've received on the dais or something like that, then
All right, I'll go ahead. I would like to recommend approval to the City Commission of ordinance number 53-23 as amended and handed out here tonight, amending the land development regulations, section 4.4.13 L2 or I2? I2, thank you. Minimum number of off-street parking spaces to extend the parking exemption for existing commercial buildings that undergo a change of use and for existing commercial buildings with outdoor use areas to exempt such properties from providing additional on-site parking for properties within the West Atlantic Neighborhood Subdistrict through December 31st, 2026 by finding that the amendment as amended and approved thereof is consistent with the comprehensive plan and meets the criteria set forth in the land development regulations.
Nicely done.
I second.
Diane, call the roll.
Chris Cabezas,
Yes.
Peter Dwyer,
Yes.
John Miller,
Yes.
Kristen Finn,
Yes.
Ivan Heredia,
Yes.
John Brewer is absent, Jim Chard.
Yes. To staff.
Let's adjourn. We already gave you the Sunday Village update. Sorry, it's such a long meeting, and you've had the pleasure of some pretty short meetings leading up to this. Next ones are probably going to have some items on it. We've got quite a few projects in the queue, so get ready. January 17th is our next. You all asked me to look into and send you the information relating to landscaping and the natural environment. So I sent you all the memo and backup that was given to the City Commission as you requested in a previous meeting. I also forwarded the links to the agendas where it was talked about so that you could review it. I don't know if there's anything further you want to talk about at this time or direction that you have for us.
I need to review it deeper. It was a lot.
Okay.
If you want to.
Could we put that off to our next meeting?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's really best in the place of board comments where maybe you have a chance to look through what I've sent, and then at the next meeting, if you want to discuss and decide if you need to discuss further and actually put it on an agenda. But I think for now, until you give me direction, it'll just show up under, this format where we talk through it.
I think the reason that it was brought up was that it's been, I've lost track, a year and a half since we did that, and that perhaps we might do something, if we're in agreement, to put it in front of the City Commission again, particularly since we have 2 new City Commissioners, relatively new.
Yeah, and realistically, it's something that you may want to talk about in January and get prepared for sending something, say, after the election, when there would likely be additional commissioners who are new, and renewing it at that time rather than renewing it before you have new commissioners. So that may be a strategy that you want to take as well. Good thing is there were some regulations that went through and looked at with the code with the new Chapter 2 update that did give staff some more administrative authority over certain applications to make things simpler, particularly for smaller projects. I think was our artificial turf ordinance adopted? Did that get approved and adopted?
I believe so.
So we've made some strides in that way, which a large part of the research that was done that Rebecca's team worked on, we assisted by queuing up all of our CLGs that would respond. So we put a spreadsheet together and shared it with her team of what the regulations look like for historic properties. So that was very much a part of that ordinance and taken into consideration. So I think that was a win for historic properties.
What's a CLG?
Oh, sorry. So a certified local government is what we are classified with the state of Florida's Division of Historical Resources. We are a certified local government, and there are dozens throughout the state that have a bona fide historic preservation ordinance program, a board with qualified board members, staff, and being a part of a CLG with our bona fide program allows us the ability to ask for grant money, for instance, that is non-match required in our small matching program, and we've received $250,000 in grant funding since I started in 2016 and monies prior to that have funded projects studying historic districts, creating digital databases and GIS maps. We've done quite a bit with that funding. So CLG, our partners, I have a email blast, and whenever I have questions and say, I need to look at relocation standards. How is everybody else doing it? I can send a blast out and ask my other partners across the state, what does your code say? What challenges are you facing? It's usually a 10% return rate, which equals about, anywhere from 7 to 11 different communities usually immediately respond and help me out.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
What I really liked about that artificial turf issue is it's something that we as a board brought up, and I think it was John specifically who raised the question, and the city followed suit. I'm very proud of us for doing that, and there may be other opportunities for that.
I think the board's very astute and tuned in, so we do appreciate that you were picking up on things that we had been dealing with as challenges as staff across the city. We started to see a proliferation of artificial turf going in everywhere, and our senior landscape planner was like, wait, stop. So it was a quick response. I think that was as busy as our team and our department and our law partners are, that we were able to get that before commission and the way we did and how timely it was. It was a great job.
I have a question. Since joining the board, I've become more interested in historic communities and historic neighborhoods around the state. Is there another historic community around the state that you think is interesting to learn about? Maybe even look at videos online of their boards having discussions just to, hear different types of thinking of things?
Sure. I mean, in our county alone, I think Palm Beach County has a historic preservation board. You could look at them. The town of Palm Beach does. They do things very different. They recently got the historic preservation planner from West Palm, took the position at Palm Beach, Frederique Mittner. She has served as the Florida Trust president over the past pre-COVID, I think, time frame. She's a great speaker. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. Are they going to institute any changes in Palm Beach with the way they do their process? So you could Google them, West Palm. And then if you look out broader across the state, Gainesville has a program. Kathleen Kaufman, who's been a consultant for some period of time, is now their preservation planner. She sits on the board at the state of Florida, was appointed by the governor. She's running a great program there. I've listened to their meetings as well. I try to stay, tuned in with some of these other groups. So I think you could, Google some of these cities and look and see. Tallahassee has
Fernandina Beach.
Tallahassee has some, but they're not as progressive as I thought they were. So I think that you could probably
Miami too, right?
Coral Gables, yeah.
Miami Beach, probably.
U.S.
St. Augustine's a great one, and they've had a lot of, they're ahead of the curve on a lot of things that we're just getting launched on, like resiliency to sea level rise, which I think may have been Hurricane Michael, maybe. It was one of the hurricanes. They had massive flooding happen in St. Augustine, and what they did immediately was mark the high water marks on buildings and infrastructure throughout the city, like light poles, street signs. And then they began asking for grant funding to do resiliency studies. So Jenny Wolf, who was there, has moved on to another community, but they're a great community to look at. They're very ahead of the curve on things. Yeah.
We may need to do a field trip to Key West.
Another great one. Yeah, I mean, there's great ones across the state. There's a lot of great, and some programs are very small and infant stages. We get requests from other cities. I get them often where they ask about our process and program because their city's looking at starting, and they haven't even started yet. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in the state, quite a
Good to
bit.
know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Are you going to circulate that photo I sent you?
You know, I have not touched email. I will say that there is something that will be cycling through to the board here in the next couple of months that has taken my attention over the course of the last week, and I don't want to say too much so that we're outside of any quasi-judicial rules and Kelly doesn't stop me. But I was pretty focused on something over the course of the last week and a half, which involved demolition of a structure that went to special magistrate today. So I apologize, I have not seen the photograph that you've sent. I'll go looking for it.
Well, just simply, in the Lake Ida, or Del Ida district, there is a large real estate sign that says for sale, and on top of it says historic. And I think it's just a great statement of the value of historic districts. It's near your house.
Yeah, I know the house.
This picture could be anything.
Well, it could be.
It's been on the
Could be
market.
could be downtown historic district.
I got to be careful what I say.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything.
Well, I was going to ask you about that property that we were talking about across Lake Ida and Pineapple Grove. That there was a lot of construction happening there. And they came in front of us and they didn't get approved, but all this construction was happening.
We've had a meeting with the owners. If they haven't submitted already, they're going to be submitting a COA. We've explained the process. I think there was some misunderstandings on their part as to what they were allowed to do. I have to give people the benefit of the doubt. They are entitled to come through the process and come to the board and ask for whatever they're going to ask for, but we have had
They asked, they didn't get the answer
better to
they
ask for
wanted.
forgiveness
So-
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
but
does look better.
We're on it. I would just suggest you reserve comments at this point until the project's before you.
Noted.
Anything else? I mean, I feel like there's so much we're working on, and I'm just trying to
There's some
keep
stuff
my,
I'm going to reach out to you
Yeah.
just one-on-one on. I don't want to take the board's time up, but there's some stuff that, is going on.
Please do it. Any one of you can do that too. If something comes up, a thought, you're just like, hey, I'm curious about something, like your question. You can email me and we can set, 30 minutes on the calendar to do a quick Teams call and go through, whatever questions you might have. We're here. We'll do our best to get you on quickly.
Great. All right, adjourned.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Good work.
Come on, man.
You got the gavel, you got to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, my voice is giving out, so I can't use that.
You're getting better with each time you're up there.
Yeah, ONH.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a good one. See you later.
How's the campaign going?
It's going very